the Poker Player Podcast. I'm your host, Andreas Fröhlich, and in today's episode, I'm joined by a young man who loves great game of Pot Limit Omaha. But before playing Pot Limit Omaha, he's had a challenge where he played 50,000 hands in less than 24 hours. He is on the pursuit of GTO, whether it's in poker or outside of poker. He documents it on YouTube. And from what I can tell, he thrives in investigations. Welcome to the podcast, Joey.
What's up? What's up, Andreas? What's going on, man? How's it going? That's your intro, a young man. Well, welcome this young man right here.
Exactly. That's how I learned it.
I like it.
What's going on, man? From Joey. It's going good. How are you?
Oh, it's been a fun day. It's been a fun week, fun couple weeks, fun couple months here. It's been enjoyable. It's been interesting. A lot going on with well, maybe not a lot going on, but maybe something going on with one specific man in the poker world. I feel like he's dominated the poker world for the past couple of weeks. Kind of dying away a little bit now, though.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Mike Postle, everyone's heard about him. But how, after creating so much content, is he haunting your dreams these days?
Not anymore. No, not anymore. I was just thinking about him a lot, right? Because you're trying to figure out what's going on. Am I missing something? Am I not seeing what's happening with this guy? So I think it's on your mind a lot. And I had to take the last week and a half off of thinking about content or doing content, because it was definitely at the top of my brain was my man Mike Postle and his crotch theory optimal play style. So yeah, needed to get that in my system. So we'll see what happens with that. It's kind of in a lull right now, and there's who knows what's going on out there behind the scenes. So
yeah,
we'll see what develops.
I'm on my toes as well for when the news come up about the lawsuit and everything, and how that developed, and whether also some involved people are actually held accountable for what went down in that area. All these other people like Justin. Is he held accountable for his role, and in what sense? I guess time will tell that. But for now, I think there's some silence, and I guess behind the scenes something's developing.
Right. Not really much to say too much about what's public out there right now. You got the casino itself hasn't really even, maybe they made one statement a month and a half. So very interesting decision. I think those decisions that we see from all these people, Postle said nothing, Justin said nothing, their commentator friends have said nothing, right? So none of these people have said anything. And if there was something to be said about anything, right, I'm sure they would come out and talk about it, right? So I think the silence speaks, even though there is this lawsuit and they do probably should stay silent. If these guys are innocent, nothing happened, I'm pretty sure they would come out and say, everything's good, everything's in the up and up, that kind of stuff like that. So we haven't seen anything like that at all. So I think it's very clear what direction this is going, and whether what happens to these two people, who really knows, man. It's, we sort of did what we could do from our vantage points, and now it's up to the other people involved and the players that were involved with this fucking dude at the table. So it's up to them to see what happens from here.
Yeah. So in the last 1.5 weeks, you said you were kind of trying to get some time off Mike Postle. So what went through your head, in terms of content, or we are not yet to know where were you heading? Or
I'm not really sure. I think before Postle started, I had an idea because I needed to do these videos for my prop bet with Doug Polk, and then that Postle thing kind of came up, so I just went pretty hardcore into that. And I don't really know exactly where I'm going from here in terms of doing more content, not doing content, doing behind the scenes. I don't really know. I feel like I could go any direction right now in terms of where I want to go with things. So there's a lot of content I want to create, but there's a lot of other things that come along with content too that are just not very fun to deal with. And I feel like gonna maybe give me some trouble one day in terms of how I might handle some situations out there. So I feel like it's just, and plus anytime you say anything now, it's like you have to say, you can't be wrong about what you're saying. You can't word it incorrectly. You can't explain it only halfway. You know what I mean? There's just all these other things where being someone who has an audience like that, there's a lot of cool things, but there's a lot of shitty things that come along with it too, man. So, and I think once you keep raising your status or platform in this, you really got to be careful in terms of what you say, and not necessarily be careful in that it's inauthentic in some ways to who you are, but it's you say something and then some motherfucker is going to pick something out, and then you gotta walk them. It's like these people feel some sort of obligation for you to clarify every single statement that you ever make that they might disagree with. And it's not really enjoyable at all. I don't give a fuck to go back and forth with with somebody random on social media, even if I know them a little bit. Like, I don't give a fuck what these people got to say in terms of like trying to give me this feedback about what I'm saying, but they do it in this way that is just completely off-putting.
I mean,
and they think that they're entitled to some sort of, they think they're entitled to even you clarifying any to them, right? And it only gets worse and worse as I feel like as you keep moving up and up, and as you keep meeting more people, or as your audience grows and all this kind of stuff like that. And it's just like, is that really fun to deal with on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube? And it's not very bad, and it's not something that happens a lot, but it's just very unenjoyable to deal with.
Would you say that comparing the Mike Postle incident, all the videos around it, and like you're basically mentioning offending people, has just gotten like way too easy these days? Would you say that in the Mike Postle videos and in the recent times, this is much worse than it used to be? Like,
what do you mean by comments to me, or comments about people, or what?
Yeah, in general, just the backlash of like at least some individuals you got, for example, at the beginning, where it wasn't really absolutely clear whether Mike Postle was guilty, or just anything you posted in recent times. Is there something specific that you felt?
Not during Postle. It's pretty universally decided the dude's fucking doing something, man. I don't think you can watch the progression of his play style and what he does. So anyone who's a non-believer, right? And my goal isn't to make everybody believe. My goal is to show you what exactly happened with this guy. So I think anyone that watches that and sees what happened with the dude, it's pretty obvious that something's going on with the guy. So there really is no like, this is one of the biggest live stream poker scandals I guess we've ever had, right? So I don't know if you can go. Right? I feel like it should be more talked about, because what else has really happened? And people don't celebrate things in poker anymore. There's no like, okay, this guy won this guy won that. Let's talk about it. Let's watch this hand. Let's go over this. There really is no focus on the positive moments or the winning moments or the in-game moments that take place outside of an angle or something like that. So what else is there going on? And so people kind of wanted to move along from that pretty quickly, it seems like.
So, I mean, drama is probably also a lot easier, right? Built on negative events. So how would you say that in this year, in 2019, we could have celebrated poker achievements more? I mean, what is it like?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it seems like the hands, like I don't see the hands. I don't know where the hands are. They don't come across my viewing, right? Whether it's like, because there's a lot of people that post so much fucking shit out there that they're on Instagram is just like a bunch of different clips of hands, and like there's just all these random accounts that just post a bunch of shit. So eventually what happens is you just keep seeing a bunch of shit, and you're like, you just stop paying attention, because even if there is one or two or a few good things in the mix, there's just so much shit they have to go through to filter out. So I feel like that's what's taken place with a lot of these in terms of like seeing hands. And it just seems like the community itself is less interested in really sharing or celebrating positive moments that take place in the game. And I think, it's I don't really know how you fix it. There is no media company in poker that lets everybody know about what happens, because all the media companies that are in poker are all out for themselves and in terms of their own content. So there's no, like, they're all at odds with each other behind the scenes, sort of thing like that. They got a bone to pick. They hate that. You know what I'm saying? Like that. So there's no coordination and there's no promotion of.
I mean, they're all competing, right? That's what you're saying. Like they're all competing for the views.
You could see it like that. I mean, we could say I'm competing against people. I don't really see it that way. I think there's more value in working together than there is in going after each other and not promoting the best moments that take place, no matter who or where they took place at. So there is no real established media in poker like that. So you never get to see the moments. The moments are kind of all spread out there. Maybe one's on Twitch, one's on a Twitter clip, one's on a YouTube video, one's on Facebook, right? So they're all over the place like that. So it's very hard to keep up with what exactly is going down. So eventually the only things you're paying attention to are the more dramatic moments that catch your eye, because those still stand out. Whereas somebody winning a tournament doesn't stand out anymore, because now you've seen so many people win all these tournaments and they're all branded, or they're all presented to you as just another tournament. So what should you give a fuck about who wins any of these tournaments, when the promoters themselves and the players themselves don't even really seem to care that much that they won these tournaments? So if the players don't care and the companies don't care, then why would you care exactly as a fan of poker, as someone following along.
Yeah, I think it was like the prestige of poker tournaments is a great topic that we can definitely go back to later. When you look back, I mean, you've been in the business for quite some time, almost 10 years at least on YouTube. Like back in 2010, I believe you had this challenge, and I've browsed through your YouTube channel and I went back 9 years and I saw that first video with the 50,000 hands played. Can you still remember those days and where the attention was when you started out? Like, I'm guessing you just threw that out there, started experimenting and try to put out some content.
That was a parody of someone else who did a video. Like that was my second prop that I did back in 2009, 50,000 hands in a day. And it was just a parody of somebody else. This guy named Sheeran Athene is his name. And he's in like a World of Warcraft now. I think that he said they say he leads a cult now, but he's doing his own fucking thing somewhere over in Europe. But he made this like joking kind of spoof video. I basically just parodied his video. That was my whole entire thing behind it. So I wanted to make something, so I tried to make it funny, interesting. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So, but yeah, that was when I made some videos and I made random blogs along the way. But I never really it was never anything I took very seriously in terms of creating content or making content in that space. But yeah, in terms of how things have changed, Metalord in the chat said, feel like there's a lot less poker celebrities. And I think that's very true, is that the people who are known in poker now have overtaken the people who used to be celebrities. And the only way you become a celebrity or well-known in poker now is by doing things for yourself. So you got to start a stream, you got to start a vlog, you got to do a lot of content. You have to actively promote yourself on social media in some capacity. And the people who don't do that aren't going to ever be well-known now. So you have to choose to be well-known now, whereas before you could be well-known just by being around ESPN a lot, being on TV a lot, being at the right place a lot, being on cash games a lot. But all that stuff's so segmented that the only people we can really see that build up are like a person like a Garrett Adelstein, and then the other, miniature characters that are on Live at the Bike, that are characters in the Live at the Bike system. But in terms of outside the poker world, Live at the Bike doesn't necessarily get that stuff out there in front of everyone and get them to care about their show and about these people like that. So that's why you see the people who are the well-known in poker now don't necessarily even play much poker. And when they do, you don't really care about watching them for their poker. You care about them for watching their vlog or watching this or watching that. So it's this time where like you see these hands and see these winners and you don't know who the fuck they are. And it's no fault on the players. It's that no one is helping those people become anyone in poker. And rightfully so, debatably, right? Because it's like the media doesn't see any incentive to want to do that. And a lot of times the players aren't cooperating because there is no real incentive for them to cooperate as well too, because it's not like they necessarily make more money.
Like the bottom line that I see, especially when it comes to like attention in the poker world, is that these days the new celebrities in poker, they're the people who are basically creating the content on Twitch and basically are there with a very high consistency and they're there for the people, and they're building all these communities, which can also, of course, like that can be a good thing, right? But they, as you say, they build it mainly around them, right? And then there's a question like how much are they collaborating with others? How much are they gonna build a community in the broader sense? And I think there's like a lot of differences between everyone in poker who does go down that route. For example, I don't know if you follow Xflix, for instance, because I think like he's really understood extremely well how to build a community in Germany around not just him, but also other people, that are also streaming. And I think he's built a great community around it. And people are also extremely friendly in that community. And I think he's doing a great job when it comes to that. Maybe other people don't really go down that road, and they're really trying to monopolize their views and try to, be egotistical about the whole thing and trying to, get all the attention for themselves. But I think like Xbox is a really prime example of where that's not happening. Or what do you think? Have you ever followed him?
I don't watch any. I mean, I know he does stuff. I know he does a lot of the smaller stakes kind of stuff like that, and he streams a lot. But I'm not really watching. I mean, I think when you take a look at the poker players now versus other content out there, man, I'm very rarely going to watch any poker player unless it's someone who I feel like brings an entertainment and educational value at the same time. So when you look around and you see the content creators in poker versus the content creators in other spaces, like it's not even close in terms of engagement, creativity, personality, just all these sorts of, when you think about the qualities that make up someone that's great at content, like these guys, and also the content that you're seeing from these people, they hand select. It isn't that captivating, engaging anyway, unless you're one of their hardcores. So kind of what it looks like, what's happening to me is that you mentioned there's these communities being built, and that's what it is that people don't really paying attention to what's happening in poker. They're paying attention to what's happening in these segmented communities. So you have the Vanimi and the Brad Owen fans right there. You have people that pay attention to maybe Marley and Johnny Vibes, and maybe they pay attention to video bloggers as an entire whole. You have people who kind of pay attention to Granu, people pay attention to Doug, and they kind of pay attention to the streamers and kind of attention to me. So it's all really segmented, and there is no talk about who's actually winning at the game or who's playing the game. It's just talk about these individual players themselves.
So you think that the main criticism goes towards like that the top players of today, Linus Love and all these guys who are in the super high roller scene, they don't really get any of that. Maybe they sometimes don't, like, some of them pretty much also want it. Some maybe don't want it. They don't want to be estimated their true skill, because otherwise they're getting less action in the games today, and that's really an important skill to have, to get like into games and get the action. Because if everyone thinks you're the best, then who's going to invite you in the games anymore? So you're saying that these people, we don't really talk about them nearly as much, right? Those guys,
exactly.
I mean,
let's say we did 2 months of Linus Love videos in the top high stakes no limit guys, then those guys would get well known, but that's because we're some form of media right now. So the media is now people like me, people like you, people like Doug, and no one else is necessarily talking about anyone outside of their own circle. So when you do a vlog, you're only talking about yourself. You're not talking about what's really happening in poker. So there is no one talking about any online. No one's ever really talked about online in terms of the media sites in general, even though it's much more captivating and it's more catered to an online poker fan audience. So the strategies you see in poker media are I can't state this enough. They're fucking terrible, right? Compared to other industries of gaming or sports or anything and I understand that the media in these other areas, they have an direct incentive to build up the sport that they're in, because that makes them more money, and they're actually working together with the leagues in a lot of ways, whereas these sites themselves aren't working together with the poker league, and there is no such thing like that. So there is no contract that a poker player has to sign with a company that says, I'm going to do a bunch of media with this company like that. That doesn't exist. Whereas in UFC and these other things like that, these things do exist. And also there's value in promoting yourself, because then you're going to make more through endorsements and through opportunities. Whereas in poker, that is very non-existent right now for a majority of people out there. So when you look around and see what other people are doing, and then you understand, once you know the people that work in media, you understand why it is the way it is because there's no incentive for these individuals to necessarily go be above and beyond, because they're still making the same amount of money, and there's no forward movement, and there's really no light at the end of the tunnel in terms of where they can go with their careers and themselves. And the only place for them to really go is to go outside of poker in a lot of ways. And the ceiling is you become an on-screen commentator potentially. That's as far as you can really go. And those places are few and far between. You really got to hustle behind the scenes. You got to network, and you really got to work your connections to be able to get those jobs, because the people that are getting those jobs right now on camera are hustling super fucking hard behind the scenes. It's all about who you know in these circles out here. So anyone you see doing this work, they're hustling for these jobs a lot of times, unless you're one of the best, going to come to you. So there's just all this sort of combobulations with people that don't necessarily give a game itself anyway, and rightfully so in a lot of spots. And the game itself is still beautiful, but in terms of where you're sending people, it's like, where are you really sending them to? Like, where are they going? Are they going to play on the fucking app sites and get scammed by an Instagram person with 2 of their friends playing against you? Like, where are you really? Where are these people?
To pick on the point that you mentioned about all these other industries, I personally just know the Hearthstone industry because I'm interested in that strategy game as well. And I see sometimes these events at BlizzCon and whatnot, and then I see this really, highly competent commentators who are often going to be players, and they sit there, and they make some, in my opinion, high quality content around the game about I don't know, semifinals, finals, and then all these other rounds that are before them, and there's really content in between the matches as well, and it just creates a huge dynamic for the entire show. Whereas in poker, yeah, tournament starts, everyone's accumulating chips. In the end, we have the final table where things got interesting. But I think that we're probably in a very early stage of commentating. I mean, of course, like a guy like Nick Schallman is a crusher at commentating, but there's not really other guys like him. And I think there's also no manuals on how you learn these kind of things to be a good commentator, to make great content, to talk about the characters on the poker final table, because you got to do some background checks. You have to see, okay, who is this guy? Who is this guy? What can I learn about these people, and what kind of strategy they might play in the game, and what motivations also they got for playing this game, because we're going to have a huge mix on the final table in poker, I think. And when you look at them, we've got the professionals who have studied PL solver and whatnot, and they've prepared in that way. But we also got the recreational who just had a good run and he's just playing for fun. And then I think it's up to the commentator to provide some really good entertainment there. And then that's a hard thing to do, I think. Way to go, I think, for a lot of people. And the question is, are people even interested in going into that direction? Is there really a huge interest that we have more breakdowns of the people on a final table, more entertainment, and how much can poker entertainment when there's a final table still evolve, and how do we do that? Who's gonna tell you how to get better at this? That's the real question.
You study exactly what took place that was successful in the past, and a lot of what was successful in the past was very story driven. So we can watch these streams and we don't know a fucking goddamn thing about a lot of these players. Like, I've seen some guys on stream 10 times. They've told me nothing. They say this guy went to college somewhere. Like, I don't give a fuck where the guy went to college at. The guy went to college 14 years ago. I'd like to know more about the guy. We heard he went to college 6 years ago. I don't need to still know the guy went to college still. So I think what you're seeing is that there is no information and deep dive and story and research being done on these players. It's just like, all right, we've seen Steve Chidwick for the past 6 years. Like, what's there more to say about the guy? Well, that's on you as a storyteller, and that's what gets you interested in these things, is you learn about the people. Why are vlogs popular, even though these guys aren't necessarily top poker players, is because you get to know them as personalities, as people. So now you become connected to them and you want to know exactly how they did. Whereas when you watch these streams now, it's like, well, I don't know anything about this guy, so why the fuck would I care about how this guy does? I now know people I care about. All right. Before, you didn't know anyone. So it's like, okay, I care about this guy. I see him on ESPN, Negreanu. He talks a lot of shit. He talks a lot at the table. He knows what your cards are. Cool. I'll care about Negreanu. But it's like, where are you really? There is the personality at the table now has shifted because play styles have shifted. So that personality does not come out in these people. So you don't get to know about them from their personalities. So you just have these dry personalities, and they're actually not that way off the table, but it's on the creator of the show, whatever stream you're on, to make your guest interesting, which is something I always try to do with my content, with my podcast, is I try to let you know what's interesting about my guest. That way, when someone comes on my show, you're going to get to know them very, very, very well, because I'm helping you get to know them. That's what I try to do. And when I try to put things out there, that's what I'm trying to go for. And I think that's what ESPN and World Poker Tour did very, very well at the beginning, was they told these stories, but that takes work and that takes effort and that takes research. And these things aren't in place
and
right now for whatever reason. This isn't what takes place.
Okay. Yeah. When did you start? Like, you started the Poker Player, I know the Poker Live podcast, and, inviting all these high stakes players. I think you started like 5 years ago. You got all these online crushers, and, to basically give you an insight into their heads. That's what I always loved about your podcast, because, where else would you ever listen to somebody like Ben86 just talking about how he approaches the game and what, you couldn't really see that anywhere else. And you could just, learn about what made these guys different from you, because I'm, still laddering, of course, in the poker world and trying to get better. And then when you listen to these guys, you can at least get a glimpse of what they have gone through and what they struggled with, how they have overcome adversity and just became those top-notch players. And, some of them might, even share a lot, even though, it might not even be plus CV for them, because it might encourage some opponents to work harder and get better and basically become an opponent in the end, and then making less money. But they still were, in that sense, so generous and share their stories with us on your podcast. And I think yeah, that's not been done at all for online poker players outside of that. And yeah, these days it shifts towards the more relatable content creator that's maybe very similar to you. You know, he's on Twitch and he's clicking these tournaments and he's trying to make a good run. That's like the entertainment. And maybe also people who show you the whole cards with the vlogs and these different genres that you've been talking about, right? So yeah, how can we basically portray the online poker player that you've invited on your show better? And yeah,
you have to they have to, first of all, you have to, the reason why these guys don't do anything is because the people that are doing interviews, they don't know these players. So me being part of that world and knowing everyone for many, many years, and knowing some people for many years, knowing other people, meeting them over time and getting to know them through playing or through 2+2, then I think it becomes easier for me to be like, hey, you know, once it's established and once that brand, or once the whatever you want to say, image, right? Once your podcast or your content becomes this type of content, then more of those people, as they watch it and get something from it, they want to participate in it too, because they realize that it's an experience and it's something special that they can go on and they can be a part of, and that people can watch and remember and they can look back on there. So I think that a lot of those people would be interested in doing more stuff now if they were asked by people, but they're not asked by people because people don't know who they are. And how would you know who they are unless you go on the 2+2 high stakes thread? And then even if you went on the high stakes thread, how would you know who they are outside of that? Because you don't know anywhere they're at. They're all in their circles on Skype chat, in Discord groups. There is no regular posters on poker forums anymore, because the poker forums have kind of turned to shit in a lot of ways, because you have these people who are very uneducated, and their insight you just you'd rather just never read again, right? And these are the loudest voices on these forums. And once you have one guy who just continuously posts nonstop, and you're like, I just don't want to fucking deal with this guy's comments, you stop going to those forums. And I think that's what's happened in a lot of the areas. And now the communities have gone to these sub communities on these group chats, on WhatsApp, on Discord, Telegram group, like all these. That's where all the players that used to post actual things of value on the poker forums, that's where they're at right now. So everything's so segmented and it's all split up. And I only see it getting more and more split up in a lot of ways. And the reason why vlogs are so popular is because, one, they're on YouTube, which YouTube is the main content platform right now for poker. And second, it's very easy to digest. It's a story. You get to know the person, you connect with them. It becomes a habit of you to watch these things. And now there's more and more vlogs being created, so more and more people get to watch them. Whereas online, like, no one's putting up their shit online for the most part in that same format. So where would you ever get to see these? Like how could you get to know what an online guy's up to if they're not telling you what they're doing and no one else is telling you what they're doing? The only way you get to know exactly what's happening online is for someone to tell you what's happening online. And for you to know what's happening online, you have to really pay attention to what's happening online. But what's really happening is it's very slow. It's very boring overall. There's updates every few days. It's not necessarily that consistently captivating unless you're in the streets yourself. Then it might be. But what online's come to is right now, it's like you got to find your site, right? You got to find your site. You got to not get cheated. You got to make sure you get paid. You got to try to get a good rake back deal. You got to make sure you know the host or know the people that are putting you on the site. So these are the new skills at what makes you a lot of money at online poker, not just getting as good as you can. That still matters, but there's so many other things to take into account now in terms of what makes you a successful, winning, profitable online poker player.
Yeah, I call that skill is like as a broader skill, poker politics. Like this is really one of the key skills that you need in poker to succeed, I think. And yeah, earlier it was just, you know, you being really a great player, which is obviously still very important, but these days you just have to negotiate a lot. You have to manage all these other skills, which I guess is a natural development also of poker becoming tougher in one way. But also on the other hand, you know, we can see that there's just some people, and I think that the root cause of these things are the mostly the bad regs. Like the people who can no longer win at poker, they're gonna have to find something to survive. So they're gonna have to invent new skill sets in order to make more money again, or in order to make any money again, because otherwise they die in the poker industry and they just have to go elsewhere. So these bad regs will then, you know, come up with privatization in any sense, like in online poker, in live poker, and think that's a great thing. Poker skill gets frowned upon more and more also within the recreational players. People hate losing more and more. I think that's what you also can see. Like, people really look down on poker skill, and people also kind of started accepting that, for example, even not having people participate in online games on a normal poker site is acceptable. I think this is one of the most deadly things for poker if you think about it long term, and people just don't see it. I mean,
well, I'm sure they, right? Like, you can see it, right? But where's your proof, right? Where's your evidence? Who gives a fuck, right? Like, who gives a fuck what you or me think about the future of online poker? Like, we're not poker sites. We're not this, like, so that's what happens is, like, these things almost don't matter in a lot of ways. And no one's necessarily listening, even though I do think people do listen to these things. So maybe that's not true. And maybe people actually do care. They just need to hear it put in a certain type of way. But yeah, I think what's happening right now is that the skill gap has now become so wide at online poker, and the strategies for winning have now become refined in a very, very, very annoying fucking way for a lot of people out there. And there's so much talk of cheating, so much talk of bum hunting and seat scripting and using HUDs. So people think that's cheating. And then you have the actual, maybe you are getting fucking super used on some of these sites, right? There's all these things to overcome if you're a recreational player. Then when you go play, you got to play against the top players and you're getting instantly sat. Like, it's not a very pleasant experience, and the sites never put a stop to this. So what we're seeing now is another extreme adjustment where they ban the winning players, or they jack the rake up so high that these sort of players don't come in there. So there's been no ideas tried in between, and the sites just sort of let the cash games deteriorate. There's no promotion of the cash games as something special. There are no events. There's no extra marketing. There's nothing that goes into these things, where I think that people still love online cash game. They love seeing the fast pace. It's faster. There's no tanking. They know the players. Like, there's still a big interest in this area, but an actual site has to do something about it and then promote it and then get it in front of people. And there's all these other challenges that come up to place. So it makes sense that this is how things have evolved.
Yeah.
And I don't see it getting better, right? Like, how is it going to go back to some other way when I just don't see it, right? If the other option is raise up your rake or ban winning players, then why would you say, okay, let's try to fix the ecosystem and get rid of seats, do this, do that? Like, if now it's going to anonymous, no table selection, all the ways that it used to be online poker is now it's not like that anymore. And it's a much different atmosphere, a much different approach to things. And right, it just is what it is. Things evolve.
What do you say though? What do you think about the anonymous games? Because I think as an attempt to, like, it doesn't feel the same for me anymore playing poker anonymously, but I can totally see this as a necessity for online poker for the next 10 years. Because, if you can't ban HUDs otherwise if you don't have those anonymous games. And even though it doesn't feel the same anymore, it's the most secure environment for a recreational player long term. Like, let's imagine, like, anyone played on these anonymous sites, and maybe 24 hours later you get those hand histories and you know who you played against debatably, right? This is like the only safe environment that you can have, that people are not bum hunting you, because you just got a new HUD every 4 hours on running once, for instance, right?
Well, I mean, there certainly are some advanced ways you can bum hunt anonymous games. I won't get into exactly how that works or how you do that, but there are definitely ways you can still do these things in these games, right? There, I mean, I played a lot of anonymous poker on Ignition, or Bovada, whatever the hell it was called before, and I just get boring after a while, because it actually makes you a worse poker player. Because a lot of the most interesting things to me personally about long-term dynamic and about turn and river tendencies on these later streets and finding out where people are in balance, all these things like that sort of go out the window in a lot of ways. And it's a lot more just straight exploit sort of strategy, and more of a mental battle in a lot of ways, which are fun, but they actually make you worse at poker. So when you go try to play against players who you actually have to know their screen name, the strategies all change, because you can maybe play anonymous and you could have a completely fucked up continuation betting strategy and turn betting strategy and 3-bet pre-flop strategy. And you could do things that you won't be doing at any point in time on regular tables. So the strategies in a more advanced level are very different, but I don't know if a lot of people realize that, but they are much different. And things can make you an absolute crusher at anonymous games that are going to get you fucking destroyed against good players at non-anonymous games. So it's like a very different form of poker to me. It's completely different, actually. I think there's 20 to 30 things that are very, very different, and probably even more than that. And they're subtle in some ways and some are larger. But that's what, when you figure those out and when you know that, and luckily there is not much content out there about anonymous games, so you can still absolutely destroy anonymous games right now. That is by far where the best value is anything anonymous, because even if you're playing against good players, there's still things you can do.
For example, like, do you have like, or do you might not want to say that?
Listen, I ain't talking
about strategy. No strategy over here.
Until it's out there on a wide screen, I'm never talking about any of it. I'll die with any of my poker strategy, my anonymous approach strategy. I've like written a bunch of things down, and I say, whenever this comes out, whenever it starts becoming normal, then I'll start talking more about it. But until then, I'll just die with all my approaches, man. I'm fine with it, man. I don't need to. I don't feel like I don't have to share this stuff out there about what works and what doesn't work and all these things like that. You know, you put that time in, you put the work in the lab, and you put the work in at the tables, and you go through the trial and error, and then you give it to old Jimbo over here, who immediately doesn't need to put in those 35,000 hands and a bunch of those kind of spots, doing it themselves. So to me, you know, the idea of that giving away this, and I mean, you could argue mindset strategy is
on that note though, do you think that companies like Upswing, Poker, Razy Reg have how much have they contributed to the industry going like in this direction, because they've made people better?
Well, I think they just helped to raise that sort of the skill, the bottom skill gap, right? So the top skill gap is now getting even stronger naturally, because there's better products out there in terms of solvers. So now you're seeing these top players play against other top players, and that's raising up. Now you have that middle class and that lower class raising up just a bit too. And what's happening is that so many people are now raising up to that middle class and that lower class that now when you're at the real bottom class, like you're at a pretty big disadvantage against a lot of players out there. So now with all the content, that's just a natural progression of things. It's like there was no more training sites or real courses for the most part until Upswing came along. Then you see the success they have. Well, then why would I not put out a fucking course too? These guys are making so much goddamn money. Why would I not try to monetize myself, especially when money becomes harder to make? So I think it's like monkey see, monkey do, in that people see Doug and Upswing have success, and then now everyone's got a course. Fader puts a course out. Dominate, you know, everyone's got a product, everyone's got a fucking course. But that's also the evolution of online content in 2019, is that everyone's putting up a course. It's very easy to do. It's not hard to make. There's courses to how to make a course now. So it's so easy to do this stuff now. Record it, outline it. You can just copy other courses. Like all you got to do is you go to Fedor's course, you go to Negreanu's course, you go to these other. You go say, okay, they did this. Talk about this, right? All right, boom. I'll do that. That's my outline. I'll put it in my own words. That's my course. That's really it. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, you could literally copy the ranges, right?
You can copy whatever you want to copy. You just put things in your own words. They're like, okay, if they say something witty, you can change it your own way. So that's what's happening is there, guys. Okay, I take an idea I heard here. I put my own spin on it. Now it's my idea. Now it's my course. Boom, whatever. So we're going to keep seeing more of that. And it's only a natural progression of things. So it is what it is.
I mean, it is for a shame. But the question is also, you know, what about the masses of people watching poker online? Like, how can we, as content creators, make them aware of all these things are happening, and they're actually in the end not even good for them? Like, because a lot of people, I think that what they don't see is that it's actually in the end also bad for them if the poker dream is dying. Like, if you actually despise people who are at the top of the game just because they're winning so much, and you think they deserve it for somehow be banned from your local home, not just a local home game, but maybe also a public game in a casino where, you know, it's now private only, this guy is not going to play there anymore. If you think that's just right and that's justice, and all these, you know, people who worked so hard for the game shouldn't be invited anymore, same online on Natural 8, GG Poker, that, you know, you cannot really go out there, win 50 to 100K from all these other fish and then, you know, not be banned. I mean, I guess some people have not been banned, but I can tell you what people are not getting banned. It's the people who are affiliated with a streamer, most likely, right? These people are not getting banned.
Surprise. I mean, listen, this is what happens, right? It's all about, like, it goes back to what I said, right? You want to get a job in the poker media world? It's all about who you know. It's all about who you talk to. It's all about who you work over. It's all about who you hustle. It's all about who you become friends with. It's all about who you act like you're fucking friends with, right? Like all these things, they all matter now. As you mentioned, as the political game or poker political game, whatever, as this becomes more of a necessity, you see this happening more and more. And then what happens is you see some people having success do that. You're not having success, and you say, well, listen, here's this dude doing this, right? Well, I guess I got if I want to have success. That's what I guess that's what you have to do. So that's how this stuff works, man. And it sucks that it's not you just load up and you play. And there still is that. You can still do that too. People could still make it, but we don't really see these new people make it or anything like that. It's just a different environment, different world right now. It's not as much about who's great at the game and who's got that combination of personality and ability to make themselves not only a great poker player, but an interesting person in general. It's not really about that anymore. It's about, who's got the best script, who's got the best undetectable real-time software, who's got the best collusion strategy, who's got the best overall game, right? Those people still stand out, but they're very, very few and far between. And now what's happening is it's okay, how can I develop these other strategies? Because what are the sites going to do about it, man? You got ACR. You think ACR is going to figure something out, right? Like, what the fuck are they going to figure out, man? There's no disincentive to cheat now. And look what happens. What happens to him, right? Like Russ Hamilton doesn't even happen to the guy, right? I mean, his reputation's ruined forever. But in terms of like, if something really happened to these people that do these things or that get caught, that are doing these things, that are working together with teams and that are running these solver programs, there's nothing happening to these guys, right? So it's like and what happens is you see other people doing it and you say, man, like, I want to do it, right? But then there's I don't want to mention any high stakes names or anything like that, but you kind of see them and you say, well, if that's what I have to do to compete, or I think they're using it, maybe they're not, maybe they are. It's just all this more bullshit you got to fucking worry about. So as a player, you're like, am I really that motivated to get myself to this level when there's so much that I might need to overcome, even if I don't have to overcome it? But it exists out there and it is happening out there. So just knowing that it is enough to really fuck with people's mindsets in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I know that happened with people out there that are still currently competing.
I think one of the prime examples for me, at least, is when you look at two poker players. Let's pick Christoph Vogelsang and Joeingram. And then you look at Vogelsang and you look at all that hate. Like, I get it. Yeah, he had that hoodie up here and it looked shitty and whatnot. But he was just trying to play his best, and he wasn't against the rules. He was just trying his best to crush his competition, who was obviously strong in the superhero tournaments, and everyone shit on him for trying that, right? And then you got, Joeingram, that's the right name, right? That was him who, like, doesn't pay back people. It's okay, whatever. And it just gets forgotten. People don't pay back. You hear so much in the poker industry when you walk around the live circuit, this guy owes me money, this guy owes this guy money, but they never go public in fear of, like, basically never seeing the money again. And then,
there's other reasons too, not to talk about this. I mean, and there's a lot of, it's not as simple as like, I don't want to, get paid.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, there's other reasons too, but still, I mean, it just gets, it just gets kind of normal that, scammers are just getting away with a lot of shit these days in online poker. And I guess we can argue for that in a lot of ways.
Listen, Andreas, they're getting away with it in live poker too. Okay. I mean, I don't know.
Live poker, yeah.
This has been my biggest revelation since ACR was I've learned so much about what's happening in these home games and some of these casino games, how easy it would be to have something happen in live stream games, how easy it would be to have things happen online. Like, I feel like I used to be like the other way where I never really worried about it or thought about it. I just focused on becoming as great as I can at poker and building a winning strategy. That was my main focus. And now it's like I'm sure it's like overblown and it's probably not happening to this degree, but you never know, right? And the thing is, who's going to stop it, right? Is the PP poker agent that you deposited from, who's taken 10% off the top or 10% of your winnings, 25% of your winnings to get you on a good site? Is that guy, is he like, come on, man. It's like, where are you putting your faith at with a lot of these things?
Yeah, certainly not the sites and also not the individuals who are profiting from it. The online poker sites, whether they're ethical or not, you just always see that obviously the bottom line is they have to make the most money from it, except for maybe some exceptions, right? And then the question is, okay, yeah, who's going to do something about it? I don't see too many people. And then also there's one aspect I see that I also want to interview more people about it. And that is, like, when I raised these concerns about online poker and live poker and where the industry is heading to people, some people would just tell me, well, why do you worry about things that you can control, mate? Just play poker, just make as much money as ever possible. Just make money, make money, make money. Why would you care? The answer is because I fucking care about poker, right? I care about this game, and it has basically allowed me, like, I'm thankful for this life that I have now because it has allowed me to get to this position. I've made enough money from playing poker so that I can basically decide on what day I want to play poker, work, put out some content, and what day I don't want to do anything or work on myself, go to the gym or do whatever. And I don't have to follow somebody's orders in life, which I would have debatably hated, especially if I didn't like the person. Because if I wanted to work for somebody in my life, I would have rather worked, of course, for somebody who I liked. And if that person was an asshole, which I think a lot of people deal with in their lives today, they just work for somebody they don't like. And then, how are you gonna, online poker basically saved that reality from me. And I'm thankful for it. And I want to preserve it for the people to come in the future. And that's why I care. That's why I put up this fight, in order for people to have a better awareness about the industry. And I don't just look away and say, okay, I can't change it. I'm just going to focus on myself and I'm going to try to make money. And this is just why I do it. But I can see why many people wouldn't, because
I would you
sometimes can't change it.
My advice to anyone is never think about that stuff. Just think about, worry about yourself, worry about your friends, worry about maintaining your skill, worry about what you can do with your skills outside of the game. Because worrying about a lot of this stuff, man, is it's like a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and you don't really see much return on it in the short term, right? Maybe like for me, 5 years from now, 6 years from now, when I personally keep putting out the messages I've been putting out in these past bunch of years and thinking about it, then, we might start seeing something happen, especially if it becomes legal in America again. But, I mean, I don't know. I just don't have much. I don't have much faith, but it's like, it's a big reason why is it's because the people that are in charge of these sites, in a lot of ways, right? They don't have direct incentive to grow their sites to, like, they're already making enough money, or they just don't care. It's not their business model. So only people we really see doing something like that are Party for the most part, but the ecosystem in general has deteriorated to a lot of ways. And I think it's still possible to make a living playing online poker, right? But is the dream is I want to become one of the top players and I want to try to make $1 million, a couple $1 million a year. Like, that dream isn't really in existence anymore for a large majority of people for a number of different reasons. So that you can still 100% make a living play online poker. And I think it might even be debatably easier now if you know what to do to make a living in online poker, because there are now, if you do shop around, as I mentioned earlier, you find some really good fucking deals out there. But what happens is, find a bad deal, you don't have a chance to win some of these bad deals. So if you be knowing where to go and knowing where to play and knowing how to manage your risk versus reward on these options is a huge skill right now. So if you can do those things, you can navigate those things, and there's so many, it's just a lot different. Whereas before, you had to get good at poker. Now, those things matter just as much to me, and maybe even more in some ways that you play, in terms of being good at the game itself.
Totally. I mean, the just managing where you play, and I mentioned the trust between you and these, agents. Maybe some of them are your friends, right? Because you've noted, like, if you have been in the poker industry for a long time, you got a lot of options. The question is always also how much fun that is if you play on these weird sites, and it's all short-lived, and where you maybe have a lot of action for a month and then you have to hop elsewhere. You have to make sure that friend of yours is inviting you to a game. That he's not inviting 40 other friends to your game, because then everyone's farming on those games and you're playing against all these friends of your friend, and then all of a sudden you don't have a good game anymore. It dies within like a month or so, right? So you have to make sure, and it's always about having those cuts between, I don't know, 10 40% or whatnot, and then basically politics. And I think that the affiliates and the people who manage those deals, not the poker players, they're the people who are making the money. they're really like,
the affiliates are making me money in poker right now.
Yeah.
There's no variance for the affiliates, man. These guys just win. So all these people who sign you up for their PKC club or their PP poker club, or who get you on these sites, or they send you, like, that's what I realized. I never knew these affiliates until I did an affiliate for Upswing. And I was like, wow, I'm the biggest fucking idiot for not doing affiliate for many, many years, because it's just, you just make money from it, right? You leverage whatever it is, whatever your networking ability. And people have been doing this for a long time, and they've been making a lot of money getting people onto different sites. This has been a very normal way. A lot of people crushed it back in the early 2000s when the poker sites were coming up and they were competing for new clients. And so it's not an uncommon thing to see that, but it's just like, that's, yeah, people are doing very, very, very well. And a lot of them are doing very well behind the scenes because they're not promoting. They're just asking you, hey, I got this, I got that. And we could debate those are maybe the best options to play, because where else are you going to play? If you're American, right? Where are you going to play in line, right? You're going to play what? Ignition, Bovada, you're going to play on Global, you're going to play on maybe ACR, you're going to play, where else are you going to play? I think those are the three main ones that are above ground, right? And then you have PokerStars, you might be able to hop into, WSP.com might be able to hop into as well. But the other options are so much easier to get money on there, get money off there, and be able to just play on your phone. And the games are better. The games run more consistent in a lot of those clubs and a lot of these home games areas as well too. Sometimes the players. You at least know you're probably not using software, even though bots of software exist on these sites that people don't know about or don't think about or whatever. And then if you want to play there, okay, where else can you play? Well, then you can play on the other sites as well too. So I mean, there's options out there, but
yeah, I guess
that's my main point, Andreas. You saw there. Listen, there's a lot of guys who do content now that you don't know. They don't talk about. They're all affiliates, right? All these guys are affiliating for poker sites, and they just aren't going to promote it because they don't want to be seen as someone who's being an affiliate. But most of them are affiliated in a lot of ways, and maybe rightfully so too.
Yeah, I mean, affiliation is not per se obviously a bad thing. Like in business, It makes a lot of sense if you're doing it for a good product. And this is exactly where the things go. If you're an affiliate for a good product, props on you. You're basically doing somebody a service because you're promoting a good product and a fair product. But if you're an affiliate for a bad product, I think that's just unethical. Like, it is just straight up like it is. Like, you're basically, I mean, sure, you might promote a poker site that's shady, and you might make somebody else money, and then you can say, well, it's not unethical. I'm making this guy money. I'm doing this guy a favor and basically dismantling it as a whole thing. Yeah, you can do that, but this is just where I see the cut. Like, if you're promoting shit,
you're speaking from a winning poker player perspective. That's why you think this. So I'm telling you right now, the only reason that you think this is because you can win at poker. And when you can't win at poker, you don't think like this. You need to make money, right? I used to think this too. I'd be like, because that's why I didn't promote anything. I never affiliated anything. I never even tried to make money for years doing my stuff because I didn't need to, right? So it's pretty easy to be like, to take that stance when you don't need to make any money from anything else. You can just make money from poker because you're good at the game or you have a good strategy. But once you realize, okay, I'm like, I can make more from doing this, or I'm not that good at poker, or this takes up too much of my energy. I can't keep winning at poker. I have to do this, right? Like, that's what you do. That's what people do. What are you going to do? Like, this is the norm in poker, is for people to affiliate and send you to sites and send you to these things that, like, they could be above ground, right? And you could have met the team, and you could have met the security guy, and you met the owner, and he's so fucking nice to you, and blah, blah, right? Like,
why are they so nice to you?
I know they're always so nice. Listen, they are so nice because the value that you bring to them is very, very high. And the value to what you get back ratio in a lot of ways is much more favored to the operator or product side of things. So of course they're going to be fucking nice. That's how business works. So it's like, of course, what is the security guy going to be like? Yeah, check this out. Here's all the cheating happening here. Here's all the scams that, like, here's these guys didn't get paid out last month. Like, what do you expect them to show you? It's like the ACR brings down there, opens the door for the security office and says, here's the security team. You're like, oh, got it, right? Like, but this is just the way it is. This is how things work. It's only a monkey see, monkey do. You see your friend make $2,000 a month from it. Why would you not do it? Why not? Why not hop in there? Why not find
as you say, it's monkey do, or a fear of missing out, right? Like, we've seen the whole thing in crypto with I think BitConnect was like the prime example for that. Like, yeah, everyone was running. Like, it looked like a pyramid. They even made it on their website like a pyramid. It was a pyramid, right? And yeah, people got fucked over in the end. And the people who got in late, they got fucked over the most. And the people who were affiliates, I don't know what happened to these guys. What happened to Trevor and all these fucking affiliates for BitConnect? They did. I don't know. Did they get in jail?
Money and they're done.
What?
That's it. They got money. They're done. That's it.
I mean, I guess they paid a fine, like at least some of them, at least the bigger ones. But you know, some people just took the money from BitConnect and they're good. And how are they good, man? They promoted a pyramid scheme. People have been killed in the last couple of centuries, maybe it's a couple of centuries ago for doing that, for participating in a pyramid scheme, right?
What do you
I mean, you've been killed.
Right, there are a lot of
no. I'm just saying. I'm saying like I'm not saying I killed a pyramid scheme, guys, but like at least some consequences, right? I mean, some sort of.
I don't think it works that way, brother. This is what my major thing I've been learning is I don't think it works that way. I
just
really
fuck
don't.
People over.
I don't think it works that way, man. I'm researching these cases and seeing what happens, and of course, with the online space itself, it's a very unique space and it's very new space in a lot of ways. So, you know, yeah, I think these guys can do these things with these online sites and right, like. I don't know, man. It's some crazy stuff happening out there. So it's just stuff that's probably always been happening in my mind. Like I'm sure it isn't new. It's just, to me, it's kind of new in my mind. So you can kind of see it's where a lot of my thoughts go to, because it's what I've been really learning and studying and reading about recently, and just seeing what's going on, seeing what's happening, and seeing how easy it all is to happen. But I'm sure there's
you don't see those things until you get confronted with it. And for me, for example, with GG Poker Natural 8, it was, I think, no, it was GG Poker. Like, there are two skins, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I just got banned at some point. And like, I got this email, I'm like, yeah, and then I'm asking, hey, what's going on? Why am I banned? And then they wrote me, yeah, you had that HUD on my case. Yeah, I said, yeah, man, I'm playing on PokerStars. I'm using a HUD on PokerStars. I've been streaming your games on GG Poker, by the way, just saying. And then they fucking said, yeah, you're not allowed to do that. It was like, why is Jimmy, who is streaming for your site, why, I'm just using your example, sorry. Yeah. But why is he streaming with your HUD, with a PokerStars HUD? He's doing the same thing. Like, literally 3 of your streamers are doing exactly the same thing as me. I didn't even win at GG Poker, okay? I was down $500, right. But they banned me. And then, okay, they unbanned me saying, yeah, don't do this again. And it's like, okay, I'm never going to fucking play at this site again. You know, and yeah.
Why not? Why wouldn't you play there again? You try to get under.
I might get it under there with like a different name or some, if I can still make money there, right? But I would never promote them in any way. Like, this is just a shit site for me when that happens, right? It's just ridiculous. Like,
a lot of what happens to you personally, right? Like, you care about this because it happened to you. I care about ACR because it happened to me. I don't really care as much about what you're saying. It didn't happen to me. You don't really care as much about ACR. It didn't happen to you. So that's how a lot of people look at it. Poker is like, does this affect me? Well, I kind of care, but why? What does it matter? Why do I? There's no reason to give a fuck.
That's true. That's true.
Unless it's really impacting your games. They don't see it that way. I think you should, but other people don't see it that way.
Yeah. No, I care about ACR. Like, I just can't do, like, from my position, I can't do much. Like, especially because I don't have the information. Like, it's for me far away. I don't play on ACR. I don't know what's going on there. But I mean, for me, it was not that I also care about other people getting scammed by Naturally and so on. But for me, it was just like the awareness that started with that, because it was personal. I think if they've never banned me, I might have never realized. I might have never gone on 2+2, Googled them and see, okay, how many people got scammed? How many people, you know, did report that they have now 9K on the site that got confiscated for no freaking reason, and there's no investigation done whatsoever on that. And I started looking for those things because it happened to me, because of the awareness. Other people obviously are not going to do that, but now I care because I had the awareness.
They just take people's money and they don't give back to them?
Well, there's just some individuals. Like, there's not too many on 2+2 reporting from those things. But yeah, some people, they have been banned and their money have been returned to them. And some people report they have been banned and the money got confiscated for like being against terms of service. And, you know, their terms of service are ridiculous. Yeah, they say that they don't want winning players in that sense. And then, bum hunting is illegal. Like, yeah, sure. Like, how are you gonna enforce this? Like,
like they're enforcing it.
Yeah.
like they're enforcing it. They're banning people. I mean, they are enforcing it. They do what they want to do.
It's just like with
what are you gonna do
like a roll of dice.
Right? Like what is people gonna do about it? They can do whatever they want to do. What are you guys gonna do, right? I mean,
yeah, but
Bruno, what are you gonna go 2+2 about it? They don't care, right? Like whatever. Like they're catering to a different market, they're catering to a different crowd. That is just. That's the state of poker, man.
But I mean, Bruno says like, yeah, but GG Poker understood how to promote their site with like collaborating with streamers. Yeah, of course they did. Like, of course they did a lot of good marketing schemes and everything, like getting people on the boat and being nice to everyone. But they're still banning winning players. I mean, they have.
I think a better way to look at it is that any site that isn't doing that is a complete fucking donk. I think that's the way. You don't give credit to a site that works with streamers when it's literally the like level 0 idea you do for your poker site, right? It's like it's like a step 0, right? Okay, I want to market my site. Maybe I should get people to stream on my site. No shit, right? That's level. So anyone that's not doing that is fishing extremely hard, and it's like it's almost inexcusable in a lot of ways to not have somebody streaming your site. Like, and many people stream. It's like, it's kind of inexcusable from a marketing standpoint to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you need some sort of affiliates one way or the other. What is so funny?
Well, it is what it is. This is my stance right now. I'm like, I feel like I'm energetic on a negative side, man. I can't find the positive right now, bro. I can't, like $1 million I can't see where the positives are going on right now. I'm sure they exist. I'm sure they're happening, man, but I'm struggling.
Well, I guess like
despair and
have you been to
at last keeps lasting, whatever it stays this way for as long as it can, sort of thing.
You know what? Have you been to one of the meetups games? With Brad Owen or Andrew?
Yeah, I've been to them.
Yeah, I think they're great. I mean,
100% agree. Right.
Yeah. That's like a great thing. Like this building of the communities, the people who do it well, the people are actually doing it in the name of poker and not in the name of like, of course, like, yeah, I know Brad and Andrew, they're going to get paid for going to those casinos. Like, yeah, they're going to make some money too, of course. But at the same time, they're still building something nice with those communities, and then they're giving a lot of value. Of course, they should get paid for that. Whereas others, they're promoting shit, and then, they also get paid. It's like, whether you're promoting shit or whether you're promoting some good things, like a good place to play, doesn't really matter. You're getting get paid anyway.
Yeah, I could see. I don't know, man. I could see poker just becoming. Everyone's got their own little communities. They're all very spread out. And like the major community is like a vlogger community or something like that. It's not going to be me because I'm 100% going to do other content outside of poker just because it's far more interesting in a lot of ways. And there's a lot more possibilities and opportunity outside of poker. Whereas the opportunity and possibility in poker right now is, I don't know, it's like, what is it, right? Where is it at?
I mean, it is a little bit also, I guess if you played more live poker and you were a player of those mid-stakes games, obviously you've played higher than that. But if you were out there playing the World Series of Poker, like, I think you played like 2 events, right? And you made a vlog about it. Maybe those things, could be something. But of course, if you're not participating in those games that often and you're not playing poker as much anymore, but you would be still, loving the game and trying to put out some great content, then I think it's very, it's understandable that you see that.
I play online poker myself, so it's like I don't. I don't want to go make a 2, 5, 10 vlog, and maybe I will. Maybe I'm a fucking idiot for not making these things, right? From a strategic standpoint, I have a very poor strategy in terms of how I've approached content in the past, and it probably won't be that way in the future because I'm looking to evolve that part of myself and take it more seriously and look to build things outside of that where I don't have to do content in the future all the time, because the content's you have to more and more and more and more and more, and you have to keep doing it, you have to keep doing it, you have to keep doing it. Like there is no, you just got to keep making shit in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of other mindset stuff, mental game stuff that goes into being a content creator and also having high standards or ambition for yourself as well too. So it's just another challenge in itself. And I think it's a much more interesting challenge than for like myself, right? Where am I going to play? like in Vegas, there's 3 PLO games a day, right? Like I could go somewhere else, but do I want to go play at Commerce 5 days a week? Not really, right? Do I want to move out of the country and play on one of the big sites? Like, I mean, not really, right? I don't really want to get into the scripting game and get into that game, and like that's not really what I'm interested in. For what? Like, where there is no upward movement in a lot of ways in that game. It's just like, how can I get better at bum hunting strategy? And then the game becomes, okay, I'm trying to get better at, okay, exploiting regulars who are in these games. And like, it's different from a poker when you're in bum hunting games only. So it's just,
I mean, it doesn't scale long term and doesn't create
exactly, right.
Yeah.
Where is it going, right? What are you really doing with it? It's fun to do, but there's a lot of fun things out there to do. So once you realize that you can enjoy a lot of things out there, and there's a lot of really enjoyable games, even like YouTube content is a pretty enjoyable game. It's a lot of fun. Like, there's some things that suck about it, but there's a lot of things that are really, really fun about it too. And it's something that has no ceiling, whereas poker in a lot of ways has a ceiling unless you're willing to get into these very high stakes private games, and then you sell action or you could stay, and that's a whole nother world altogether that I certainly personally could explore right now, because I know the people, I know the games, I can get in any game and get into a lot of games. All right. Put it like that. Or I could start my own fucking game and people would come out. It's very easy to get people to come to these games and to get weaker players to do these things. But it's like, would I rather be a host of a high stakes game, or would I rather do something else and create something else out there, that a business or a product or a life for myself that is different than that sort of world like that?
And I think it's also a good approach to falsification. Like, if you have the whole narrative, you've been in the poker industry, you've been doing it, for a long time in your life. Well, what if there was actually something that you would love doing more? And if you don't never explore in that area, if you never like trying to get into other skills, working on them as well, trying to find out what's interesting about other industries, then you might never know. You might just always go down that path. And I think the more likely you are stuck in your tunnel and saying, okay, poker is like the only thing I can make money from, because this is what I learned. I mean, there's a lot of older people, I think, that struggle with this, because they've been, before the solver era, they've been crushing poker. Now they're not crushing poker as much anymore. And now they have to go either on these routes that we've been talking about now for this podcast so far, or they try to work on themselves and do something else, or go do the solver work as well, and they're not willing to do that. Like, so many old school players who don't survive the passage of time, right? I mean, it's incredible how some of the live poker players that are still out there, like for example Seidel is, I think, a great example. He's still there. He's still playing the games. He's not he didn't started playing with
right. It's like one person.
He's just like an example, right? But there's like
they're still playing, but they're playing 10K, the WPT Hard Rock Florida 10K, right? These guys are still out there. It's just we don't really see them because they're on the East Coast a lot. They're in the LA events. They're at Rolling Thunder. They're at Choctaw. Like, these guys are still plenty in action too. These guys are still out there battling, competing. It's just like, why would you want to play in the high rollers? Like, why would you want to do that? Right. True. If you're some of the, like, why not just play the 10K Hard Rock WPT? There's just no point to play these, especially these guys. It's so fucking boring. It's so uncomfortable. The variance is so high. The guys think they're the fucking greatest human machine minds in the entire world, because they understand how to take advice from a solver and talk with a friend. Right. So it's like,
I mean,
people are the best at poker. They always got egos.
Debatably, yeah.
I wish they actually talked publicly how they felt, because a lot of these guys, man, they could talk some shit for sure. But why would you do that, man? Why would you put yourself out there when you got to deal with fucking random people that you could not give a fuck about what they got to say to you? You got to deal with them giving you feedback and other people piling on. It's just so, all the other things that go along with it are just so undesirable in so many ways that, it's better just to kind of keep to yourself, man. Get a community of people that you're friends with, have some friends, and just focus on your shit, man. That's what I would do. If I could do it again, I would have chosen to do that versus what I did.
So yeah, you regret going down this path and rather focus on for example, like what most other people do, or a lot of these high rollers, they just decide to, okay, it's not worth it. Let's just focus on what I'm doing and what I'm
Yeah, I wish I never stuff. I wish I never went down this path of finding this stuff out. I think there's a lot of positives that came from it in terms of the growth I'll be able to have outside of poker, and whatever I'll do, I'll be set up for, and building community is very unique thing. But I think it really it took away from my love of poker that I've had for a very long time, which is finding those other things, and maybe like my world of where I played would have disappeared anyway. But yeah.
The whole deregulation, or no, the regulation actually of the poker marketplace online and live, with all the countries banning online poker, that has led to where we are now and where we're going. There's more and more countries just restricting us playing online, and that's just cutting the snake, the tail of the snake.
They probably should. For what? Why would you want to let people play out like online in these ecosystems unless you're the one in charge of the sites? When you see all these stories, why would you want to have your people? I wouldn't want my people playing on these poker sites, man. Like it's a gamble at your own risk. People aren't winning at poker to begin with in the first place. So it's like when you take in the other things going down and all this
because the only thing that, like, the reason why you would want people to play on those sites, like, I guess Stars Party, 888, and the biggest sites that are out there, because the alternative is freaking horrible. Like, if people go into the black market, this is what I've been saying in Switzerland when the debate was on. I was quite involved with the whole debate back then when they banned online poker. I've been always saying, like, look, the black market is going to be way, way, way worse. I'm not saying gambling is good, because poker for losing players, it is going to be gambling. There's going to be some danger of becoming addicted to the game, and I can see that we have to, we have a responsibility to somehow protect those people as well, so that they're not going to ruin their lives altogether, or at least there's some net for them that catches them, when they ruin their financial situation. But on the other hand, if you're gonna, banning online poker on the main sites is not gonna be the right route. Never. Like, you should, I don't know, take like 15-20% taxes, and by the way, leave the players alone and not fuck with them afterwards with a double taxation, which I think is a whole other topic that I'm quite mad about. And then when you have taxed the sites for 15-20%, which they're going to give to you, like, this is like the numbers PokerStars would give to you. I think that's at least what I heard. Then you have at least a regulated thing, like where the players play on like a normal site, and they don't go in the black market, or even in underground games in Switzerland and all other countries where they can now play on credit and ruin their lives even more easily without anyone monitoring anything. Like, there's just so much in the dark that we don't know about. And of course, if you're going to kill online poker or the regulated sites, the bigger ones, and you're just gonna get what you deserve long term. People ruining their lives, becoming gambling addicts with a much higher frequency. There's studies for that as well. When I talked about this topic with people working in the industry of players protection, some lawyers, they can show you the studies. They're out there. It's just not even close.
I could study for anything. I think I could.
That's true. That's true.
I can make an argument. If I could find a study to back up any side of things. That I love these studies. They're like, all right, Science Magazine 2013 said this, and it's like, as someone who aspires to be a professional investigator at a high level in terms of dealing with things that are going on in the world, I mean, listen, I'm gonna need a little more than a 2012 study in Science Magazine for a lot of these things that I read in terms of their evidence, their support, and stuff like that. But I think with this said, right, online poker, you can still make money. There's still people that are winning. You can still. Mm-hmm. So it's not like the, could be worse, right? Where it's all, and even with these high rake things, you can still win at the game if you play in the right games, if you game select hard, if you know how to exploit the fun players. But it's just like your room for error is that much decreased, and it's a lot of things you got to avoid, you got to overcome, right? So it's just a different game. It's still poker, and it's still poker. But if I was going to try to build a cash game ecosystem, I don't really know. I thought about this a lot. I think I would do it where if either like by VPIP, you had to play a certain VPIP, otherwise like some way to kind of to lower the skill gap amongst the players, which, like, if the bad player is never going to win against good high stakes players nowadays, right? The guy's just not going to win. He's not going to, whereas before you can maybe run it up, get lucky, like it's more likely to happen. But against these guys now, the strategies are so good that you're not going to beat these dudes long term. I think people know that. So I do like the idea ACR actually does with the rat hole game, where it's 10 big blind buy-in. I think that might actually be one of the best possible formats, because it has a low skill gap in terms of it narrows it down with
for side.
Right. So even when you have the nitty players, they still play more hands, because it's going to be better to get all in some spots. It's gamble in some spots. You're going to be getting the right price. There's more action. So there's all this fluctuation in terms of if you did solve the game, you have to solve for all these different stack size and all the different scenarios. So I think that it still has that element of deeper stack play, but then it also has this element of more gambling, where it's sort of like, how can you make the tournament format where the skill gap narrows as the tournament goes on? So it starts here, and man, I'm sure the better players are still great, but how much greater can you really be than someone who is a middle tier player, right? How much greater can you really be when you guys are 12 to 15 big blinds? I'm sure some players are going to argue they might know a few tricks that make them better, but in reality, what does it actually look like? Whereas the middle player versus the top player at poker in a cash game, the top player is going to fucking destroy that guy a lot of times. So what can you do, right? And I almost think like that format, if you don't have a game that's 2 action players and then action regulars. So to me, that seems like the ideal format is you have, if you're a 6-handed game, you have a couple action players and you have regulars in the game, but they all are action in some ways. They're willing to play hands. So that would seem like the most enjoyable environment, but I do still imagine those weaker players are still going to get destroyed in these type of games, unless you can force these people into some potentially minus EV situations. This is what happens in home games, which is why they ramble it up, because you are playing in these games where you are putting yourself in some minus EV spots.
Here is what I think about these players getting destroyed. I think this is not a new phenomenon. I think like people in poker, maybe they've gotten destroyed a little bit more the last few years because of people getting better. But I think even in the old days, when the strategies weren't so evolved, the people who figured out exploitive strategies about how in 2006 and how these opponents are playing, they were destroying them as well. Like the weakest players, there's just like a spectrum of players. And yeah, maybe it's a little bit tighter now, but like back then, people got destroyed as well. Like people lost a lot of money.
The actual makeup of a game was so much different in terms of, let's say you have 6 players now at a high stakes game on a Poker Stars. A lot of those 5 guys now, they have a very, very good exploitive strategy plus a theoretical strategy now. Whereas before, there was more stories of people winning, because even though they did have a good exploitive strategy, they didn't necessarily, it wasn't as good as it is now, because that's just what happens over time. People get better and things get better and things get more understood. And that theoretical element wasn't as strong as it is now. So you could realistically only be so good. And when you can only be so good, even as a bad player, that means you're still going to have times where you can run it up and you can win. And even over a bunch of sessions, maybe be able to win, because sometimes weaker regulars will be in those games as well too. Whereas now the weaker regulars, for the most part, aren't necessarily in those games, because now even the weaker regulars have to have the best script in a lot of different ways like that, which is why you see more high stakes actions on other sites, is because the actual makeup of the game itself isn't what it is on some of the other top sites. So there's a lot of differences between what maybe a game 6 years ago or 10 years ago with 5 good players and 1 fish versus 1 fish now. And I think just over time, right, it's, if you're not bringing in these new players, then the old players are just going to go away. They have a bad experience. Their experience playing, when you lose, it doesn't leave a good customer experience.
Well, I guess also that's why so much is now marketed towards tournaments, because in tournaments, especially the faster the structure is, the more people have chances to win them. You know, if you can run extremely good at tournaments, and that's just enabling like every single player to win at least with some percentage, maybe some less, some more. So well, I can see where this is going with the tournaments, that the cash games. And yeah, with all the seed scrapes and people just open sitting waiting for the fish, yeah, of course this is not going to work on like on so many recreationals anymore, because people are just waiting. It's just like a Shark Tank where, some fish, they might deposit and throw money at those pros, and then a lot of people won't do that anymore. But what I'm saying is, like, in the tournaments with like the larger fields, there's still plenty of opportunity for weak players to sometimes win. And I think that's maybe a bit underestimated, that people, maybe they don't see a chance for them at all anymore. They don't see a chance for themselves to make it in poker, to rise up the stakes, to learn about the game, because it takes hard work these days, at least, or unethical work, like one way or the other. Either you do the hard work, you go that route and try to become as good as possible, or you're just gonna, become better than affiliate Poppy and basically affiliate the shit out of things and try to. But you have to do that for a long time. Like, you don't get an affiliate from like today to tomorrow. I think like it takes a while. It might not even be worth it anymore.
No one knows, right? I'm telling you, I'm not like a live poker table. You got guys hustling. It's like, oh, I'll get you in this, and I get 20% make back. Like,
that's true.
I'm just like, man, this is happening at the fucking Win, in the Win poker room here. A guy from New Zealand and a guy talking from Kentucky, right? It's like, this guy from Kentucky is going to send this guy from New Zealand $600 to go play on the online site, 20% rake back. It's like, that's how you gotta operate these days, man. I mean, I think I know what it was like. I know what it could be like, and to me, it's sad to see. Right now.
What do you say to those people who look at a 5-10 game 5-6 years ago and a 5-10 game today, or a 2-5 game maybe, and then they always say like, people have become so ridiculous at live poker. They are so unsociable. These games are no fun anymore. They used to be fun. What do you say to those people? Do you think that's the reality?
They're always pretty fun, man. I don't know. I play PL. I don't play No Limit, so I don't really know. But, well, you'd have to imagine, like, it makes sense if you're a 2-5 player who used to play higher, even playing 2-5 for like 6 years, man. I mean, how much fun are you really fucking having? You've been playing 2-5 6 years, like, how much fun are you really having? You know what I mean? Like, it's what it is, kind of thing. I think for that, how do you expect these guys to behave? Yeah, sure, it'd be rah, but like, you've been at 2-5 for 6 years. It's disheartening for a lot of people. Even though you're making a living playing poker, it's still like, people get tired of the same thing over and over again, no matter whatever it is that they're doing. So I don't know. I mean, I like that in my PL games I play. It's very fun. People are talking. People are having a good time. It's very enjoyable atmosphere. I mean, I understand why games have gone private in Vegas, for sure. When you see the parasitical mindsets that these guys have, like, I wouldn't want to fucking play with these dudes if I was a recreational player ever in my entire life. I wouldn't want to give these guys a fucking dime of my action, man. When you see the way that they talk about people, the way that they treat people, you know what I'm saying? It makes, when people like complain that the games are private versus public, to me, it makes so much sense. Like that but I would want to do. It sucks for the poker itself and for the hierarchy and for the community and for that sort of aspirational sense, but like from a recreational player side of things, man.
Yeah, but I think like, the people who are so parasitical, Joey, in the 2-5, 5-10, there's some out there. I think it's a lot exaggerated. Like, there's some people who don't understand live poker, that you don't talk about your opponents on the live poker table. Like, they're just, dumb, and they might be intelligent otherwise. If your metric is that you think, being good at poker is what defines you as a person, that's obviously retarded. And some people fall into the live poker table, and they even say to their opponents, then I understand that some people like those recreations want to go private, but it's twofold, actually. It's not just those people. It's also the, slightly bad rag parasite who wants the game to get private, because then he doesn't have to compete against other regulars. I think that force is way, way stronger at, for example, a stake like 25-50. I think in that case, it's not the recreational says, hey, let's all play with recreationals today. Let's fuck the pros. It's not those guys who start those 25-50 games. It's always the pro who says, who just tries to convince some whale at the poker table. Well, why don't you and I play heads up on this table? And maybe we got a couple of other guys joining us. I mean, it's just, it's almost never the other way around from what I've seen so far. It's just,
it's the other way around in the home game world, but not in the private home
game world. I think like the old school home game, I think that was all fair and square. You know, people just play with each other, play with friends, invite people to their home games. That's all good. But the new school private game, that's what I call it. I think that's the parasitical thing. That's where people go to the casino. They hustle against other regulars and they just try to manipulate other people into playing with them in other games, you know. And this just starts with like some really weird commenting in the games, like always commenting on somebody who just was a card dead for like 2 orbits or something, and then folding 4 orbits after that themselves. Like just trying always to distract that they're actually playing an 80% VPIP all the time and just pointing out that somebody plays a 25% VPIP. Yeah, that's what they're doing all the time. It's just bad manipulation, I think.
It's called GTO, I believe, too. You're just you're phrasing it as something that isn't GTO, but what you're saying is a very optimal approach for
yeah.
Perception matters a lot, man. You want to seem like you're giving out. There's some live pro things I've like thought about over time and developed, and I like do when I play live. Like I think that I could have a game, like a high stakes PL game, where I would just be making hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year from it. And I would just be fucking destroying people in a high stakes PLO game, because all those things that make for a good live poker player, and a lot of the things I feel like I know how to do pretty well, and I would learn them over time. And there's a lot of things from like reading other people that I'm not that good at that I would get better at over time once I actually start putting effort into it. But just from playing live, man, like,
yeah, but
very different than online, right? And the social element is such a bigger thing. In a lot of ways, you can use that against other players in some ways but it's just more fun. It's like really fun to play a lot of hands with other people who are also playing a lot of hands, and you guys have a good time, you're enjoying yourself. Like it's way more fun in that element for me personally.
Here's the thing though, Joey. I've talked to a lot of regulars in poker who are playing like 5-10 and you know, maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower, and also in the online, like about these private games. And how many percent would you say of people that I've talked to would say that they're more talented at the live poker table with how they behave and they're good for the games? Like,
well, everyone thinks they're good for the game, I'm sure. Even the guys who you're like, yeah, bro, like there's no fucking chance you're good for a game. They're like, oh, I might be quiet, but I play a lot of hands, I give action, like I play bad plays. Like everyone thinks they're good for the game, man.
Yeah.
For the most part, no one's gonna be like, yeah, like I'm just fucking shitty for the game. Some people are gonna admit that, but these people it's not in your best self-interest to think that way. So the only way you're gonna get in the games is to think you're good for the games, when in reality you don't even know what that means. A lot of these guys I know that they talk about, I talk to these guys and they say are good. Like I hear their explanations, I go, no man, I would never want you in a fucking game if I was thinking about this from this way that these guys do. But it really sucks for
it's all It's all a question of, you know, what you bring to the table. Like you got to offer something. You got to at least have to have like a normal conversations about other topics. Maybe, just being like sociable in general. Maybe speaking multiple languages sometimes over in Europe might be such a thing. Like if I'm playing like with French people, maybe I can sometimes use that language as well, even though it's kind of gotten weak over the last 3-4 years. But you know, bring something to the table. And I think, a lot of people are able to do that. But then there's also a lot of people who say like, I bring so much to the table. But if I compare that guy to the other guy who was, I bring so much to the table and I bring more to the table than the other guy, like it's totally not true. That other guy might be much more sociable than you.
Well, like what do these people really know about what bringing something to the table, right? Like a lot of poker players haven't studied even what even that means, right? Like they just intuitively think that they have these skills because they're good at poker, when in reality they don't understand exactly why they're good at poker, what they're good at when it comes to poker. They don't understand how those skills or abilities correlate to other industries, and they just assume that because something's good here, it's going to be good here, when in actuality that's not how it works. Some other people's perception of things, which, you know, it's a very like communication based, I guess, psychological sort of thing, right? That a lot of people overestimate their own understanding of, even though they've never studied it before at all, and their own belief that they understand it comes from their overconfidence that they are able to understand things at a high level because they understand poker at a high level. So the correlation is just sort of all out of line in a lot of different ways when it comes to this particular thing that we're speaking about right now. But I do also think it's now, I think it's actually a pretty good time to be a tournament player, man. It seems like if you're a tournament player, like it's sort of like the skills are higher, but man, it's kind of heaven. You got so many options. Like There's so much value, it seems like, out there for tournament world. I don't know the online tournament world specifically, but live tournaments, there's so many fucking live tournaments that, man, if you know how to game select and shop around, and if you learn that, I bet there's people that are killing it out there, man.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they're
like I've been a cash game player for the last couple of 3 years, roughly, like PLO cash mainly, and I dabbled a little bit with tournaments. I played tournaments before that, and I'm highly debating to go back to tournaments just because of what I see happens. It's getting less fun if you always have to go into those politics for the cash games. Always have to find like the best game, deal with people. Like if I go play tournaments, well, I'm always in the game because tournaments you can just sign up for them, and if I go around to
right,
why not?
Time, like you don't got to put your name on a list for 3 hours. You don't gotta worry about getting the right script and the game running. Like you just go, no, I want to show up for the 7 o'clock tournament and play 7 o'clock tournament.
You say I'm here for the tournament.
Right. It's a different sort of lifestyle, shout out to it's a different sort of lifestyle. It's a different sort of vibe. It's different sort of poker. But that just seems way more simpler to me. And obviously this is true because what's the most popular poker format? It's tournament poker. Because there is none of that sort of bullshit like that. You come there, you put up your $1,000, and the blinds go up, and they like that's what it is. That's it. Same thing every goddamn time. And even if you're awful at the game, well, shit, man, you might still win some all ins, right? Like you got a shot to win big. Whereas other part of the world, right? You don't really have that shit. You don't have it. So it makes sense. Like now that I'm getting a little bit further away from the grind, my mind sort of shifting to a more general poker approach versus like super cash game bias. It all makes a lot of sense.
I mean, Joey, haven't you been inflicted with the great game of 2-card PLO back in the Bahamas? You played a 25K tournament, right?
Oh, that was awful. I hated it.
Wasn't it like, yeah, I got to do this. I got to do this more often.
No. I have not played a Dolomon tournament since then, so that's going to show you how much I enjoyed that. But I mean, it was. No, I didn't think it was fun at all. Like it's stupid. You sit there and you're folding, and then you get ace jack. You go all in. Guys got 10, you lose. It's like okay. I mean, I'm sure it's not stupid, and I'm sure I kind of want to learn tournaments because I do think like it's going to be around for the next 30 years. So I might as well learn tournaments like cash game, being the best 2-5-10 guy at the fucking Aria Rock game. I mean, not that like.
But winning a bracelet.
Who cares? You know what I mean? Like I sort of like the glory. Like why I got good at poker was for the game, but I also love the glory. Like it was awesome. Like it's fun to sort of try to chase it and see what you're chasing, see the people you're chasing, see the skill you could get to. Like seeing what's up there, seeing the best players was so cool. Like what are you gonna see at the 2-5-10 at the Aria game? Like there's Matt again, fucking 3-betting 25% this session, 10K deep. Like I just like, what do you? Okay, I want to be 10K deep, 3-betting 25%. It's like, what exactly do you want to do? Where do you want to be? Where do you want to grow? Where do you want to advance to? I love the gamification aspect of it. So it's like at tournaments, you see, okay, I'm getting better. Shit, maybe I'm gonna be a tournament player, Andreas.
I mean, I think in tournaments you might see, like, you got to be really, really good that you see that you're getting better, because tournament variance is so insane. And I think most of the time in tournaments, you go on a downswing, you think you suck. You go on an upswing, you think like you're the best ever.
Yeah, this is just like how catch games go to. For me, you drive off the bridge one day,
it's
the next day, God, man, I don't know. It's
but cash game variance in live poker is kind of, you got a little bit, you got a little bit of downswing, at least on up to some level. Of course, if you're playing 25-50, that's different. But like, at the 2-5-5-10, I think it's like a pretty smooth thing in a lot of places. Maybe not in Hold'em, but in PLO, if you're running it twice all the time, it kind of smooths out. And no, we're running once, and then of course you're pushing variance. Then
I love my favorite things to do.
Once,
but occasionally I'll do it twice, and like it kind of fucks with people too. I'll be like, once, like, I'll go twice. There's no real time, and I have to imagine. I don't know if it matters at all mathematically. It might matter peace of mind and some sort of mental game control. But I think like when I think about doing this stuff, I just think, wouldn't I rather start like one of the biggest businesses in the world? Would I rather pursue that, or would I rather pursue becoming a great tournament player? And anytime my thing is like, would I rather do this, or would I rather do that? Like, it's usually outside of I know what the poker space is. I know what the people are like. I know what the opportunity is. I know all these different things like that. And like, there's so much cool shit happening outside of poker that like people are innovating, they're putting in new ideas, people care, they love it. It's sort of like how poker was in the 2000s, right? For a lot of people, and also it's because people play for so long, they just get tired of it. It's a natural progression of things. But when I come into it with the fresh mindset in other spaces, and I have meetings with some of these companies, man, I'm like, ooh, these guys are doing some cool shit, man. It's really cool.
And I mean, do you think, yeah, like it's not even close? People have been much nicer in poker back in 2005 to 2010, and you know,
you just I don't know. No everyone's nice to me, Andreas. You got to understand, man. People, they don't want to.
Oh, come on. You got this huge community. I mean,
everyone's so nice to me. I'm telling you, right? Listen, people don't seem like they want an investigation, right? I don't know, for whatever. People have always been nice to me for the most part because I'm nice to people, but people are extra nice to me now, man. They are. It's very funny. It's very interesting. Like, it's very, you know, but it makes sense, right? They have a lot of respect for what maybe I do or the things I've done in the past, and you combine that respect level with multiple different things. So they want to treat you a certain way. Also, you know, I still get a lot of gossip. I get a lot of people meetings all the time, man. It's pretty wild.
Of course.
Things I hear that the comment is always like, don't tell anybody this. Keep this off the record. And then they tell you something like, oh, that's pretty interesting, right?
Yeah,
like you hear a lot of cool shit like that.
I mean,
fascinating.
You know, as a smaller content creator, I get a lot of shit for some things. I gotta ignore these people, but you also gotta ignore like the people who praise you too much. Like you're gonna not hear both, right?
Respect, bro. Respect ain't given. Just because you make content don't mean you're gonna be. You got to earn respect from. If you want respect in a competitive, smart industry with people who have incredible egos about themselves, you got to earn that fucking respect.
Yeah.
So you can't think that, oh, just because I want the respect and because I'm making videos, like, you should respect my opinion. Like, no one gives a fuck about what you got to say until you prove to them you know what you're talking about. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of repetition, and it's more to it. So if your main thing is you want people to treat you a certain way, or you want people to respect you a certain way, you got to earn that stuff like that. So you think some of the vloggers, like, they probably want this respect in poker, right? But amongst great poker players, a lot of times they get completely shit on and disrespected, even if it's wrongfully so, even if the people have the wrong perception of their ability or what they've done at poker. And that's because great poker players respect people that are great at poker or that are great at something that they can identify. So
and sometimes they don't.
Right. Sometimes they don't care. They only value having poker skill as something they're going to show respect for in a lot of ways. So that's always been the case in poker. There's always been this disrespect shown from a successful person to a lower stakes person, right? It's not a new thing.
Yeah. But in one way, I would be a hypocrite for saying, you know, that whole respect thing. Like when I was at the beginning of my poker career, especially like 2012, 2013, towards like really good players who are now sometimes at the top of poker, you know, yeah, I can still remember putting some shit into the chat box to even really, really good players, you know. I for sure have been guilty of not disrespecting some really good players back in the days in mixed games, for instance, and how they're super good. So I'm not saying like I'm an exception for that at all. But yeah, you know, there's like ego around, and people are just going to disrespect other people for not being good at poker because that's like the main metric they're operating. And then when you go outside the industry, for example, my mother, she works with textiles. She's a teacher, and you look at the channels that basically show you how to make to do knitting and do bags and stuff. You go in the comment section, people are so nice. Like you see your YouTube channel and people in poker in the industry, and yeah, there's very polarized. There's some really good praise, and there's obviously a lot of haters. And you go into that comment section in another industry, like, what is this? Is this the same YouTube? Is this for real? Like you just see maybe 1% maximum of people who are like dropping something. Yeah, because they're getting value. You know, they're getting shown how to improve their skills at making something that's useful at home, and they're just being nice in return. But in poker, you can trigger people so easily. You're just gonna say one wrong word in poker on your content, you just trigger like dozens of people, and then it just comes as a backlash. You know, it's like. And I think like in a total sense, also understanding from myself and my history, like I'm not saying like I'm an exception. Now I'm reading a lot of books these days from Robert Greene, and that shows me that taught me self-awareness. Like this guy, what he writes in his books about, you know, being self-aware and also looking at your dark side and on what you have done wrong, and that taught me a great deal. And then I saw, how much of a potential I would have to develop myself and, live up to higher standards. And then I understand more other people more, their insecurities and what they're throwing at you, their projection that they're doing. It's insane. It's complete insanity sometimes.
I think
But
like
you understand.
like where in like just because you understand poker, right? The actual psychological element of human beings, like we don't understand at all. We just think that we do. But then when you start reading Robert Greene books, and when you start reading Dale Carnegie books, and when you start listening to Naval podcasts, and you listen to these thoughts that these people have, you start to realize like you don't really understand the fundamentals at all. So it's like at poker, you're trying to understand GTO without understanding preflop ranges. I think that's how a lot of people approach learning other things. And I've spent a lot of time learning these past 6 months because I'm trying to really broaden my knowledge outside of poker and in the real world. And that's from studying the learning process and then thinking how other people learn, how I've learned in the past. It's like you don't really attack the bottom. You don't attack the fundamental understanding of a situation. You attack the more deeper top level ideas without really understanding how they all connect and fit together with the fundamentals. So it's really hard to fully learn and get a grasp on a lot of different things like that.
Yeah, there's like this one concept that Robert Greene mentions in his book, and that's negative capability, that I absolutely love. Like the ability to entertain multiple ideas in your head at the same time, coming from that angle, and then making a synthesis out of it. That's just incredible. Like if you can not just see your perspective, but the perspective of all these other people, and kind of respect it, and then draw like a synthesis from it, which might be different from other people in the end, but that's like a really great skill to have. That just fascinated me so much because I just see that that's just so way superior to the way that I've been thinking before that.
That can be super. All these things can be super exploitative too in a lot of ways. Like you can exploit your understanding and empathization of other people as well. I mean, this is what I do at poker is I'm able to understand where other people are coming from my own experience because I've thought different ways. I've learned a number of different strategies. So when I'm in the zone and when I play so much poker, you're able to see certain things and recognize certain things and patterns and play styles and behavior and range construction that like this is what separates great poker players from other poker players is their ability to pick up on these things. And there's no teaching material on how to do this. It's something that you can get better at, or you can think about, or you could focus on. And I think for me, that's something I was always really good at. And I've noticed that element even when I get outside of this and do other things. I mean, I'm generally pretty good at picking up on to some extent, right? I'm sure like I'm missing a lot of things, and it's once I really learn, like I'll realize, I didn't know a lot of stuff. But at poker specifically, I know exactly what a lot of those patterns and actions and things mean. Whereas outside of poker, I'm starting to learn more about what these things. I mean, it's it's like a game tree all on its own. It's fucking crazy. Poker, smaller game tree. The life game tree is quite.
I see that.
Quite large, man. It's I don't know. It's a different type of world, man.
Yeah, because your attention in poker at the live poker table, for instance, is often drawn to the negative of, okay, what are these people potentially not capable of in their game tree, and then based on that you can exploit with your lines and your actions in poker. But then what your attention might not go towards to is, for example, what does even drive? What's the drive of this person to play poker in the first place? If you don't ask that person, how do you know? Like if you don't observe them talking to another person, how do you know? Like you just have to make so many more things. And then when you go outside and you talk outside of poker industry to people and you observe other things and how people behave in a more natural environment where they don't necessarily have to put a mask on, because that's what you do in poker. Put like a mask on and try to, I learned this about myself as well. Yeah, I'm basically having this character that plays poker. It's not totally me. It's just someone that I think makes sense to put on that poker table. It's not always totally me, because if it were, maybe that person, if it was just me, then I would show way too many emotions. And I, maybe in some games that's okay, and that's not going to cost me a lot of my bottom line. But in some games, it's just going to get run over if I show too many of my true emotions, because then people will know whether I'm bluffing or not, right? So, because they can see those patterns.
People have these characters in other areas of things. I mean, anytime you're people are always right. They put their best foot forward. They're always presenting themselves in a certain way, and you're not going to get the full depth of somebody from your first few interactions with them for the most part. Sometimes you might, they're not very depthful. They're quite shallow in their thoughts and ideas and behaviors. So you were able to understand them completely right away. But a lot of smarter people, especially in business world, in any sort of world where there's this pretense and when you want to put your best foot forward in a party setting, in a nightclub setting, in the dating setting, in the setting, especially in a poker world specifically, there's a lot of inauthenticity that goes on, whether it's like maybe it's a part of them, but when I meet and interact with people like that, they're obviously putting on their best foot forward oftentimes. And you can see that in them, right? You could see how they behave, how they talk, how they stand, how they look, everything about them. And then you can see other people who don't put as much effort into it. And it's quite noticeable a lot of times, but there are other people who, and these are the best operators in the poker industry and the best operators in outside of poker is it might even be exactly how they are, but it's hard to believe when you really think about that that's how they are naturally, because you're so used to thinking about things from a manipulative or exploitative standpoint. But yeah, I mean, these things are why people talk about the idea of fame, is that you never know who's being real with you. You never know who's being themselves with you, and you never know how to identify those things. And I think that you can actually identify those things. And I think that idea itself is a little overblown in a lot of ways, because if your ability to understand other people's, what drives them, as you said, if you can't understand that, then it's tough to understand where people might be coming from when they're trying to approach you or talk to you or want to be friends with you or want to do a deal with you or want to do business or want to invite you over, want to take you to dinner, want to go out, all these things like that. So there's very fascinating elements of the psychological interactions with people as you rise up an ecosystem of a status level in whatever ecosystem that you're in.
Yeah, I think that that these are some great observations that you just can't know until maybe something that maybe you fail. Like let's say you go broke. Like the people around at that point, they're probably real to you in one way or the other, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense with a, and also the way we look at success, I think, is sometimes extremely distorted. Like people are way too focused on the monetary success of people than comparing to like personal success. Like we just value monetary success extraordinarily high, whereas personal success and how you treat other people gets not really valued nearly as much. And then we just call, like, there's so many people who are called successful in any industry. They're just complete assholes, and they just exploited people and manipulated people to the max, and they just got praised for that. And then the sad thing about this is not only that will be okay, I guess, in some way, or we could get over that. But the problem is that people are going to emulate them. And once that happens, the ball gets rolling, because then everyone's getting in that same direction and think that they have to emulate the same path and going the same direction, being similarly manipulative, and to get the kind of success and recognition that this person has. So I always have admired people.
I don't know who stands out that way. I can't, in the content I take in, right? I'm sure, like, I don't know who outwardly is that kind of person, right? Like who outwardly is who we look at as successful, but really, like, we don't really know who these people are. Like, I'm thinking about other genres, things I watch. I don't really know who's an asshole, because how would you? The only way to judge someone is by the results of the game that they're playing. So if they're playing a game where money is the definer, then how else could you know?
I'm not just talking about poker. Like just also looking at the life.
Right? Yeah. Any industry.
Or for example, even like a personality like Steve Jobs, of course, genius, but there's also some things behind that, like the dark side, and that I think gets underestimated so much. What he had to do that's rather dark in order to get there. And how to deal with people, otherwise he would never get to
right. Or his personality. I mean, this is kind of like the legendary thing where people talk about Steve Jobs had the success, and then other people kind of come along and emulate that. And I think a lot of people find that they probably don't have success with that approach, and then they stop emulating that, because it takes a certain kind of, if you're not nice to people, or if you're not kind to people, you don't treat people with respect a lot of times. Like, you have to be really fucking good at what you do in a lot of ways. And even then, you're probably not going to have that top line of success. So while there are these outlier personalities who I think excel with that approach more than often, and especially nowadays when anything you say can and will be used against you in the public court of law by everyone out there, and then the backlash begins, all this kind of stuff like that, I think that we probably see in different industries those people rise less. Think about it, there's a fucking guy who's just a clear dickhead asshole in poker, like they're probably not going to be popping, man. They're probably not. People aren't really going to care about them unless they're amazing at what they do. And then people are going to be like, yeah, that guy's a fucking cocksucker, but he's good at poker. So we respect that he's good at poker and he's going to get some deals because people want to see him, but he's an asshole. And they're going to say that dude's an asshole when he's talked about, right? You can't mention Phil Hellmuth, right? Everyone's like, oh, he's a dickhead at the table, right? Randall Emmett, they're like, oh, this guy's kind of an asshole to people, but he's at the table, he's loud, he gives action, whatever, right? And I like Randall too, but that's what people think about him at the table. I think he's an asshole at the table, which, you know, kind of is the asshole people at the table too. So it's an accurate representation of how he is at the table.
Yeah, but that's often like Phil Hellmuth. Yeah, it's like a persona, right? Like he's.
I don't know. I don't think so, man.
Maybe
I think he's just an asshole sometimes.
Could be. Maybe it could be a double thing that he could say that it's a persona, but in reality it isn't even. Yeah, could be. How do we know?
After talking with him, listen, these guys that have been around for so long in poker, like they're around for a reason. You don't stay around in poker unless you have to go above and beyond to make an effort to stay around in poker. That's just, there's no other way around. You don't be Hellmuth and Negreanu. You end up like Esfandiari, where he's underground, he's private, he's got his own games, he's got a family, he's living a different life, right? The only reason Esfandiari still isn't popping on that sort of level or relevant or around as much is because he chooses not to be. If he wanted to, he'd be one of the biggest stars in poker. Gus Hansen has Instagram for 3 months out of the year. He's one of those popular people on poker Instagram. Negreanu does these vlogs. He fucking talks a lot of bullshit on Twitter all the time. He's still relevant in poker because he does these things. He goes out there, he plays a summer schedule, and now he won Player of the Year. He went above and beyond, right? He still has the talent, but he has to put in the effort to still be known in the industry. So it's like the people that are, this is what I've learned, is the people that are still around are fucking really, really smart about certain things. And Negreanu is a genius when it comes to getting himself out there, man. That dude is a genius. Hellmuth is on another level. These two guys are so fucking good at what they do. Esfandiari is so good at what he does as well too. And there's a reason why other people have fallen by the wayside and they're not still relevant. And we can maybe argue that these guys are just, they were great at poker before and they're still good at poker now, which I would say they are. But I think a lot of other players are still good at poker too, but they're just not even talked about anymore because you have to really want to be known.
Yeah,
do that.
I guess it's also it's their desire to still be well known, and I know to some people that might just not be that valuable either. Like some people just don't want the attention; they just want to be good at what they do. At some point in your life, you can,
or they don't know how to get it right. I think these guys know how to get it. That's you have to be to get attention. You have to
What happened?
Are you there?
I just lost you for a second.
Oh, my bad. I was going to say basically like in 2019, there's so much competition for attention now that to stand out, you have to be very, very good at getting it. Your strategy not only has to be good, your personality, your consistency, your repetition, your quality. Like you have to have some approach that makes you stand out. Whereas like Gus Hansen, he has that approach. He stands out. He acts like a psycho. He acts like himself on Instagram, right? And he gets praised for this. Whereas if someone else acts like Gus Hansen, maybe they think, oh, like this guy is this or this guy's that. They might get some shit talk this way. But because we know this is actually Gus Hansen and this is just how the fucking dude is, people love it.
Well, he's an old school legend too. Like everyone who was on Poker After Dark, I think has at least a chance to still have that virality of today. Like anyone,
I could help make any of those people, right? I could help make any of those people well known right now. Any of you guys out there, if the 0.0001% chance, anyone who used to be popping in poker, I could 100% get them back on the map. They'll be getting flown out to charity events. They'll be getting put in tournaments, right? Like there's so much of this what is it, nostalgic thing where people love the old school people who were great at what they did. They love them in the communities because a lot of people are still old school people in the communities. So anyone, if they want to come back, like you said, Poker After Dark people, a lot of those people, if they wanted to come back, they'd still be, they could get themselves out there a little bit, but there really weren't that many personalities before anyway, if you really think about it.
I mean, Lex was exactly part of that group, and look where he's now. He's good. He's very good at what he's doing, but he was exactly part of that group, of that legend group. And that's what I think shot him past anyone on Twitch. I think debatably some of these other characters in Twitch would have actually won the game. But then because Laxos is a part of that old school Legend game, I think that's what really took him off to the above everyone else as well. Like
yeah, he's also good at poker too. He's probably better than most of the poker players. He's got more success at poker. He's very, very consistent, very hardworking, understands how important consistency is and getting good at anything that you do. So I think he has a deeper understanding of what it means to be six game type atmospheres versus other people might not. So this comment out here said, you need to rethink your idea of success. You think success means a celebrity or an online personality, simply not true measure. So obviously that's right. So like, that's what the thing is, like when you talk about these things, that is the like most inaccurate take on what I said and how I really think, right? But that's the thing, is you have to clarify so much things these days, and so much of what you say is so misconstrued a lot of ways because people don't even understand exactly what I'm talking about or where I'm coming from with it, because they don't have the knowledge to really understand exactly, because they never thought about it or really studied it. So 100%, I don't think success means anything to do with any of that. I think the opposite. I think that you define what success is to you, and whether it's living whatever life you want to live, with your friends, with 2 friends, with 100 friends, being well known, making money, making some money, people watch your stuff, no one watches your stuff, you fulfill yourself, whatever it is to you, you define what success is to you. Other people around define what success is in general. You ultimately define what successful is to you. So that is like, so things like that, right? It's just like, these are things I feel like you have to, anytime you don't talk about these like proven sort of these things that you can prove in a lot of ways, like you can prove 4 betting aces and PLO is going to be good, right? You can prove that working hard at poker is going to get you good. But anytime you make more of these general sort of like ideas and statements and theories, oftentimes what's going to happen is a lot of people that are going to be listening to what you say once you reach a certain level of knowledge are not going to have any knowledge about what they're really talking about. And they're going to interpret what you say in this sort of like their own way, their own sort of way of that they don't really understand what you're saying. And then they're going to take it and be like, oh my God, so listen, you're saying this, like that's not true, when they don't really fucking even understand what you're saying. And this is the biggest thing I've noticed, like on Twitter, when I talk about other things, is like, you just get, because I understand how unknowledgeable I am about a lot of things too. Even about the things I talk about a little bit more now, is I've studied them so much, which is why I'm even willing to speak about them. So this idea of things, everything I've talked about here, I've thought about so many, I've consumed my mind by thinking about these things. These aren't just like random thoughts I sort of had. It was like, no, I've studied these. I've tried to find the best resources out there in terms of that break these things down in a better way for me to understand. And then I've put them in action. I've trialed and errored them. I've thought about what it is I want for my life and all this kind of stuff like that, that builds me to have like my outlook on this particular thing. And then some people see that and they're like, oh, this guy thinks success means, no, it fucking doesn't. That's the dumbest thing ever, right? Like, there's this like the most farthest thing from the truth. But I guess what I've noticed is it's just very exhausting to have to clarify these things all the time and all these different platforms. Otherwise, people think these things, and it's just like, it's so uninteresting to me to have to do that in the future, that I feel like I'm going to go away from a lot of this stuff.
But here's also the thing. When a lot of people, they might then ask you and ask for clarifications whether you actually think that way.
That's not what they do, bro. No, that's not they don't do that. They assume they know what you meant. They are going to tell you why you're wrong, and they're going to tell you why they're right. And it's like, first of all, I don't give a fuck what you're saying to me right now, right? A lot of times I don't care what their opinion is on a situation. Like a lot of times I might care to talk with certain people who I understand. But if you're like trying to tell me I'm wrong and trying to tell me what I'm saying a lot of times, and then tell me why it's so thrown off, which is kind of what a comment like this does, which is a very common comment you're going to get anytime you talk about something that isn't necessary. You can't really answer it one way or the other. It's more of this philosophical sort of idea of a thing, right? And you could provide an argument, provide evidence for the situation and for what you're talking about. But a lot of times this is not where the conversations go in social media or in comment sections or on 2+2 now or on Twitter now. So to me, it's just, they're not saying, can you explain that more? They're like, nah, you're wrong. And this and that. It's just like, they love fucking telling you. I don't go around telling anyone why they're right or wrong about whatever they got to say. They want to say something cool. Like that's just my approach, but other people have different approaches to things.
At the same time, though, they do that, but isn't it even worse if people just assume the same things, but then they don't say anything? Because let's say, especially also if you have to do with them sometimes, and they are just quiet, they're just going to assume that, and later on, maybe you hear and behind your back that they would think of you thinking that way, and that's like kind of toxic, right? I mean, that's even worse. Like if people are at least even saying, then you at least have the chance to say, well, wait. Even though it's taking so much energy of you to have to be clarifying what you have said and that actually you think differently, even though that takes so much energy, it's even worse if nobody says anything and they just assume you're that and that way. I'm going to let all of the people around them let them know that they think you're that way, and if they convince some people,
that's happening, buddy. I mean, I don't know what that's 100% happening out there for sure. But he's saying, re-listen to how I talk about, he said, re-listen to how I talk about old school players. And my point was that you can take, it was on what Andreas said, right? Andreas said that a lot of those people on Poker After Dark could become a personality in poker, right? And I said that I could take any of those people and a large number of those people and turn them into a personality in poker. There's none about success or whatever. None of that kind of stuff like that. Is just a person that people pay attention to and care about. So it's a comment about sort of off you said. So it is what it is, man. I mean, it's just, I get so exhausted. Like, I don't know, man. This is where my mindset's at right now. I don't feel like it's in the most positive space about what it is that I'm doing in the future of what I have, but I feel like it's becoming, I'm identifying the things I enjoy, the things I don't enjoy, the things I don't care about, the things I do care about, the kind of person I want to be, the kind of life I want to live, all these sort of things like that. And, I didn't really have a good understanding of these things before. And yeah, this is really one thing I'm just like, it only seems like it gets worse in some ways too. Unless you frame the idea from a perspective that you don't know exactly, you're still open to it. But anytime you state something with a more authoritative voice, then people are going to assume that what you're saying is 100% there, and you can't possibly flex outside of that main idea. And you can't possibly think four things. You can only think that one thing because you said it in a certain way that they perceive that that's the only way that you could possibly mean it. So it's just like this whole, and it's like, you don't have to respond to all these people and clarify and talk to these people like that.
Sure.
But to me, I find that I think that is part of it. And I think a big reason why I've been content for so long is I didn't respond to anyone for the most part for a long time, because I was just playing poker and making content. And now that I'm doing more of content business and networking, and I mean, networking, really, I don't talk to people, but just that I'm doing more of not things that require others, because poker requires yourself. You can do poker anywhere. That's why I love poker. But this other stuff requires communication, and it requires conversation, and requires talking and listening and all this kind of stuff like that. So it's just,
and you depend on those people, right? I mean, you sort of depending also on that. Like in poker, you just have yourself. You can just go. It's also what I love about poker. Like I even made a video about this some time ago, so you guys can check it out. It was like 5th last video or so before Mike Postle, where I said, yeah, I love the fact that in poker there was just you. You could just sit down and play, and no excuses. You just do it. You win. You get it. That's the beauty of poker. And I wish that everyone had that opportunity, because today there's so many other variables that sometimes you can't control. In poker back then when I started, nothing was in my way, like in one sense, right? It was just me, myself. I was in my way and I still am in some sense, but otherwise I can just go out there, play, and just get the success in poker, not the success elsewhere. But right. And that was the beauty of it. Yeah, but to your last point also, Joey, I think that if you look at in hindsight back at everything that you've done, like also what we sometimes forget, like look how far you've come, right? And with YouTube and everything, with poker, I think that the perspective is also like, if you look at that and also honor, like, do you sometimes honor what you have done and what you have accomplished so far? Because I think if you don't honor that, what you have accomplished so far, it puts you even more in that place, because it is like a one-sided perspective from where you think, okay, there's a lot of toxicity in this industry, and there's all these people, they're just making me mad.
Right? It's just exhausting in some ways.
Yeah,
right? Like having to care about so many people's, I guess, comments, like they don't like, it's just that's the exhausting part. It's like, everyone feels like they're entitled to get into a conversation with you about something if you state anything, right? And it's like, you can't be wrong about what you're saying these days, because then if you're wrong, then they're gonna tell you, like, I don't like, you get to a certain point where you can't even go back and forth about something with someone and maybe say something that like isn't universally agreed upon, because then you're going to have to clarify it to fucking, and that's just my position, right? It's not for everyone. Everyone doesn't have that attention on them, and it's a different thing, and it comes to territory and all this kind of stuff like that. But it's just some things that I'm noticing now. It's like, you can't really, for the most part, right, in that situation, like, you got to make sure you're right about a lot of these things, unless you want to mix it up. You want to go back. Like Negrano, he loves that kind of thing, right? I think most people just don't want to fucking deal with that. They don't want to do that. They don't want to have to go make sure every statement they make is fact checked with deep knowledge and deep understanding. And people seem to expect that this is what, just because you are in a position of influence, that everything you say has to be this, oh my God, don't you understand? People are listening to you. You can't be making statements like that, because then people are going to listen to you and you don't know what you're talking about. So make sure you fucking know what you're talking about next time. It's like, well, you're not going to know what you're talking about when it comes to fucking everything that you might possibly want to talk about. But the expectation from people is that you do know that. So it's all about how you word these things. A lot of ways you got to more like, I don't really know. But if you say like, this is kind of what I think, like, oh my God, this is. So I feel like at some point in time, everyone's going to make a misstep. Everyone's going to, especially as you branch outside of your expertise in a lot of ways, and you start talking about more things that can be misconstrued either ways. And then you could argue, well, what does that take you? Where does that negative feedback take you? Where do these comments take you? Like, does that stuff matter? Whatever. I don't think it fucking matters for me personally. Like, right, if something like that happens to me, man, I'm cool. Like, I'll go start an ice cream shop in the fucking mountains, and I'll make the best fucking ice cream.
The last part, man. The last part is actually a bit surprising to me, because I remember our conversation in Vegas when we were at the cash game table. And one thing you also advised me, if I remember correctly, was that, that you thought that in some parts that you've seen of me, that I've talked with too much conviction about what I thought, right? That you prefer to basically say, well, I don't know for sure. But now you're saying you're basically a little bit sick of that you always have to say, talk about
unless you I feel like it's something that you are an expert in, unless it's something like you've been through it, you've done it, you know it like the back of your hand. From that, like, that's the way I've always perceived that, in terms of speaking about these sort of like issues that matter in a community, kind of thing like that. And whether I still think that or not at the time, that's sort of the way I was going. When I was referring to you, was I thought that some of the comments that you were making about these things, like, you probably just didn't know much about the situation in general, and you sort of approached it from like, I should talk about it because I do make content, therefore I should have an opinion on there, and I sort of have an idea of what exactly is going on. But the way it comes across is like, I'm an expert on the topic. And I think that right there is what a lot of people I know do when they've had success at something, is they try to represent themselves as this expert in these other areas of things. And that's something that I understand is hard not to do if you talk a certain way. And even though you might feel that you are still developing your opinion, outlook, and beliefs on a certain topic or subject, it might not always come off that way, because of the way you've then learned how to speak in terms of in the content space, where it's more of an accepted strategy to talk like you know what you're talking about, because that's what a lot of the material says. That's how you should speak. So when you do have this more like unsure of yourself attitude, a lot of people might take that as you don't believe in yourself, you're unconfident, yada, 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 whatever. And then when you get people that are going to coach you in these areas, these are some of the first things they tell you, right? Like, so it's like the strategy for what it is it doesn't really go that way. So that's why you see a lot of people watch the best people, and they talk like from this authoritative standpoint, and then they develop that standpoint then too as well. And then also, as you get more confident and you get more admiration from people, you seem to think that you know what the fuck you're talking about. So then you start even acting more confident in your opinions about a lot of things like that. So it's this compound effect that keeps taking place. And as Bruno says, people, you understand that people can change their opinions. And that's what I think a lot of people also don't necessarily take into consideration. Just because you thought something a year ago doesn't mean that you're going to think something for the rest of your life as well too.
And also, Yeah, as he says, opinions can change, and I think as long as you don't state something as facts, sure, you can have like this authoritative, mindset that you're in, and then you can talk like from a standpoint of authority and be perceived that way. But as long as you, I think, don't present things as facts that are clearly not, that are just your bare opinion, I think then it's fine. Just don't present it as facts if it's just an opinion of
I
yours.
feel like people they don't necessarily understand the difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't have enough. They're not thinking deeply enough about it. They're not focused enough. They don't care enough. They don't know exactly what is fact and what is opinion when it comes to a certain topic. So I think it's very hard to identify what's fact and what's opinion right now for a lot of people, even for me watching things, right? Like when someone says their opinion, I take it as maybe fact if I don't know as much about it. If I'm watching, let's say I'm watching like a NFL, right? Like if I watch a former player speak about something, I'm going to assume he probably has a better idea what he's talking about than me, right? Does that mean he's right and I'm wrong 100% of the time about something or about a thought? Not necessarily. Sometimes right or wrong is not applicable in a situation or a comment or a thought or an idea or whatever. But I'm usually going to defer if that guy says something, even though he might be like, hey, it's just my opinion. I might still take that as, oh, that's the fact. So it's very easy to approach things that way because, well, this person clearly knows, right? Like they have got followers, they've got listeners, people are like them. Obviously, this guy knows what he's talking about. Whether it's, whether you got 100 followers, 1,000 followers, 10,000, you're a streamer, you got 100 people watching you, got 1,000 people watching you. That just seems to be how things are developing and how things are going. And if you say something, it's like it's it's very, very fascinating to watch it happen in other industries. And it makes sense why people start saying less in a lot of ways. And like, there are certain people that can say more, but oftentimes the ones that say more, like they just deal with, they enjoy and don't mind dealing with the negativity from some perspectives, right? They they like it. They don't mind. They don't care. To them, it's something that they're after, and then they can deal with. I think that's the more loudly unpopular, opinionated sort of people like that. They just don't give a fuck about that, or they do, and it eats them alive, and they just keep doing it anyway.
With all that in mind, when you would make it very, very basic and think of your own needs, right? Like whether you refer to Maslow and the pyramid and what kind of things you need, what in the poker industry or in your life, when you think about the whole industry and what you do, what do you think is actually the need that you lack, or is there any? Like, I'm not saying, but if you think from that standpoint.
I think when you really think about, just if you use the hierarchy in general, Maslow's hierarchy, and then you think about basic needs in general, for the most part, we probably almost always have our needs, and unless it's like connection and you're isolated and you don't feel like anyone understands you and you don't have that loving relationship with people, which a lot of people actually don't have. So they might be missing that in terms of getting to self-actualization. A lot of the other stuff along the way, you essentially have that in some capacity. Some people don't necessarily have a community, or maybe their community is 2 people or 3 people or 1,000 or whatever. So I think for me, I have most of my basic needs and I have access to all of my needs, and they're, it's not, so the question then becomes, why go further than your whatever your basic needs are? Why would you try to reach for more, right? Like, why would you keep going? Why would you pursue more? And I think those are the kind of questions I'm at now in terms of trying to figure out, because before I sort of did it because I thought that's how I had to do it. And now I've realized that I don't have to it's not all about the being the best at the game, or being whatever at the game, or having the most money, or having the most experiences, or having the most whatever it is, or being the best, or being this, right? Like, you don't need to be great at whatever it is that you do to have success at what it is that you do. And before, I really didn't see it that way. I thought that for me to have success at poker, I had to become as great as I could be, and I had to put all my effort and energy into that. And now I'm realizing, like, you don't have, it's a choice to do that. And if you understand why you're choosing to do that, then that's different than thinking that that's the way that you have to be to do something like that.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Whether you're basically coming from a perspective where you have to put all your eggs into one basket and just go for it and just follow the path, or now you have to just a choice, because in the end you would do that if you choose so, and you now see a lot of other options. So coming from that, what are these other options, or do you have like one in particular that you now see, one option that you could pursue in the future?
I think it could be anything, right? It could be where I have a stable relationship. That's great. We do a lot of fun things. We travel around. My business is simple. I work for myself. I sell a product. It makes $100,000 a year. That certainly could be one thing. I maybe make content, maybe don't. I completely get rid of my entire network of people that I've met. And I have a small network of people that are maybe 10 to 20 people that I talk to, maybe 5 I keep in touch with. I travel, I see people. So I think that's a very viable option for me that I never thought that I would want to do or could do, or what is for me. Another option is I could put all my efforts into creating some of the best content in the entire world that people want to watch, that people care about, that people learn from or entertained by. Do a podcast that also works in tandem with that content. That's another aspect, right? And that'd be a different one. That'd be probably a lot more of other things, and some positive, some negative, a lot more variance in that route for me. And who knows exactly where that leads to in terms of opportunity and ideas and adventures and all that stuff like that. Or another option could be I continue to play poker in some capacity, and that makes up a majority of my life. Or it could be I start a different business. I could start a big business, small business, a service-based business, a product-based business. I have ideas for all this stuff. I could work behind the scenes as a consultant more, work with brands, work with personal brands, big brands, marketing, developing content, developing that. There's all these different options of things that when you look at the talents or qualities or whatever that you have, that you can use it on, and just deciding what you want your life to be, what kind of person you want to be. Right. That's the first part.
Does that abundance of options that you have in your life sometimes, does it bother you? Because you have so many options, right? Now you have to make a call. You have to make a decision. It takes a lot of, mental energy to think about these things, to take a step back from where you're going right now, and then assessing all your options and then going for one thing. And you can probably trick yourself also quite a bit, can't you? I mean, how do you deal with that?
Prop bets trick you. They make you do these things in your mind. Like if the prop bet with Doug for content, I wouldn't have made content at all if I didn't make a prop bet with Doug. So the bets themselves, right? Those are like tricks. People, I remember like someone looked down upon me. They're like, "Oh, you should just find the intrinsic motivation versus the external," right? And I was like, "Well, I probably wouldn't have done these things if that was the case, right?" Which maybe speaks to what it is I want to do and where my true values lie and where my true beliefs lie, and all these different things. I'm trying to figure it out, right? I've never really thought about this kind of stuff until the previous year or two. So now I'm spending more time thinking about it, trying to come to some conclusions. And that's what I'm deciding. You kind of decide, like, where do I want to be in the FBI, right? Maybe I kind of want to be in the FBI. I kind of want to be in CIA, right? I kind of want to figure out these sort of like low level world investigations. I think that'd be fun, right? So maybe I might do that, right? I might just fucking drop off the face of the earth and start doing something like I might, right? I don't really know exactly where I'm going to leave or where to go to.
When you think about it, especially you having played poker for so long, right? And basically thinking critically of people, opponents for so long, you have developed a skill set that might be so valuable in other areas of life. Like you say, like having an investigation. Like if you also have like a background of where you've been doing those things naturally, now there's the question, well, how do you basically position yourself so that these skills now become valuable in the eyes of somebody else, now offering you a opportunity of lifetime that you would also thrive in doing, right? So that's, I think, something that's very interesting of a question. I think the poker industry, like some of the most critical thinkers, gets still underestimated quite a lot of what they would be capable of in other industry. Like I'm saying, like the most successful ones, not all of them. Like some people, they're just born to play poker. They just play poker. They got their ranges, they got their PIO, and they just do this, and the math and everything. But yeah, some people, they have just developed also that critical skill set, that critical thinking skill set, and that might be so valuable in other places. My question is, where can you go with that?
Right. I think you can do whatever you want to do, man. If you want to learn anything, if you understand how to learn and you understand what that means and you understand how to find the proper resources to get better at what it is that you're trying to do, you can learn how to do almost anything. It's just a matter of deciding what it is that you want to do. So for me, that's the point I'm at now. And how much does my past life and past thoughts and approach impact my future thoughts and approach? Because I always wanted to be in a position that I'm in now. I don't think you get to be in a position where you're influencing in some capacity, or you have a level of status or known or whatever, or position, without very actively seeking that position out. But I sort of did that without really understanding what that even meant. I just thought like that would be something I think I can work towards and I can achieve one day. Right. I feel like I can get good at, I can become great at poker, and I can use that ability for something at some point. I didn't really know what it evolved into, but then it evolved into content, because I just thought like, why is no one talking about PLO and why is no one good making content at the time? So I'm like, okay, here's something I think I would just love doing. It was fun. It would get more people into PLO. That was my thought. And then I realized, like, okay, I'm pretty good at this. Okay. I'm going to keep doing it. Now it's sort of evolved into something else. And I'm like, whoa, obviously you never anticipate what it's like when you get there. And then along the way, you realize what you like about it, what you don't like about it. And then you decide, do I want to get deeper into this, or do I want to get out of this sort of thing like that? Or do I want to stay where I'm at, or whatever? So you have those options to choose what it is that you do. So if I want to, raise any of these things or lower them or whatever, it's like this stuff I'm doing now it's just like poker, right? You want to play high stakes, you want to play small stakes, you want to play mid stakes. You happy with 100K, or do you want to make $1 million? Right? You want to play against the best players in the world, or do you want to play against weaker players? Do you want to, what I'm like, where do you want to do, and what do you want to do, and how do you want to do it? Right? You get to decide these things. And I think that's the point I'm at now, is I'm deciding, okay, well, where do I want to compete at? Right? What do I want to do? What market do I want to hop in? Do I want to compete against myself on a very me versus myself level sort of thing like that?
Before assuming something within like poker, and especially PLO and the content, is there any frustration towards like having a ceiling that's like on the lower end, that you think like, you could have such a higher ceiling in like other pursuits?
No, I think it's just more like, I wish more interesting things were happening, and there's not anything to really like discuss or talk about, or moments or events or these cultural sort of discussion points. They don't exist much anymore in poker, and the only ones that do exist are negative. So I like to celebrate things more and as a community, and come together and talk about these things. But those things aren't, I don't know if people don't care, or I just don't see them, or what exactly the disconnect is. But I know they're out there, but they're so spread out, and maybe I'm just like out of touch with where the conversation's taking place. I just don't know where the conversation is taking place.
I also thought about, my series, what is good for poker and what is bad for poker. And sometimes I try to think of, okay, try to write down what is good for poker in 2019. Try to write it down. I'm like, damn. I'm like, okay, I got these people building the communities, and I'm like, oh, what is actually good for the game right now? I find a lot of reasons what's really bad for it, except for like, still the people. People can be good and bad for it, but also another point towards what you just said is, I think that there's like one chapter in Robert Greene's book Mastery. What I really appreciate in that is there's this guy who went on to be the best boxing trainer. He didn't make it as a boxer himself for whatever reason. He didn't rise up to the top 0.1% for whatever reason. And he discovered that in the end, he actually started training boxers and became the best boxing trainer. And that is only one example of the book, and what it describes about Mastery, where he just picks these examples of people of where they went one route and they've been having a couple of frustrations with it for whatever reason. And then they discovered some other thing that was in line with their mastery, in line with their skills, and then slowly transitioned to that area. And then all of a sudden, their success went through the roof. I mean, even more than before. That guy was a good boxer, but as a boxing trainer, he was the freaking best. And additionally to that, yesterday I had a conversation with a friend where he sent me an article saying, well, today what matters more and more is not to become the best at something, but become in the top 10% of like 5 skills at the same time. Like it would even pick Gary Vee as an example, saying, he has these, multiple different skill sets that he has. He might not be the, that's obviously debatable, but like, yeah, okay, public speaking, how would you rate him in percentile? Is he 99? Is he 96? Whatever. What about brand? Like, is he a super good branding guy? What about his understanding of all the social media? But he has this whole package of everything. Like he picks all these skills together. He's also a super good sales guy. He understands sales, extremely well. So now, because he's worked on those skills for 20 years, 15 years, now he put all those skills together and boom, he's out of, he comes out of nowhere, right?
Well,
just because
he wouldn't say it comes out of nowhere, but he would say,
well, yeah,
over 10 years, like every single day, right? So he didn't really, but that's the perception is he came out of nowhere, but he didn't. He bettered his skills over time, and starts selling when he's a teenager. So obviously, if you sell for 30 or 40 years, of course you're going to get better and better at sales if that's all you do. Just like Eric Seidel, Barry Gregson, they play poker every day for 30, 40 years. They're going to, you get better and better. I mean, maybe not poker, maybe poker's bad example because it's more of a mental thing and other elements. And maybe as you get older, I get things, who knows? I don't really know how that might work. So maybe that's maybe not the best example. Maybe you don't get better at sales when you get older too, because you stop caring as much and you're actually better when you're younger. So, I mean, I think he's a great example of a person who he knows what he wants to get after. He's got a very consistent message. He understands brand building very well. He understands staying on topic and staying on point, and the idea of repetition and consistent repetition that he understands very well.
But imagine he just stayed with selling. Like, there might be a lot of other Gary Vees who have just worked on selling for all their lives, and they might be the top 1%, top 0.1% or whatever, but they haven't worked on all these other skills that he has acquired, and they're never going to get to a success level, right? So that's like the point of that whole article, which I find fascinating, because I think, okay, what have I learned? Well, I've learned the second language, English. Okay, that's like the first pillar. I have a teacher's degree, so I have some ability in teaching, or I try to develop them, but I'm long not where I want to be in terms of how I can, educate people, right? Education is really important to me. And I have this poker skill, which kind of became my passion, right, for the 20s, and now I'm here. So what I'm going to do with it? Like, these are my pillars, and communication might be another one, but I might not score as high as I want to score. So I'm going to have to work on my communication skills. I might have to work on my people skills even more to force that into a higher degree, that then I can pull all these things together and then create something, more meaningful.
Exactly. Yeah. You get to decide what you want to work at, right? You get to, you probably been working at things you don't even know you're working at. Like, I thought this other night, like I've become very, very knowledgeable about Las Vegas from living here, but I would never have thought about that. How that works in terms of anything, I don't really know. But that's something I realized the other day. I was like, I was like thinking, like, what do I know? Why am I like the way I am? Like, I think a big reason me talking to people why I am the way I am is because I like girls a lot. When I always love talking with chicks. So I would try to talk to every single girl when I was like, 17, 18, 19. I would try to holler at any girl, right? I'm talking to them, I'm trying to get you to like you. Like, that's just what I did, man. I'm trying to meet a girlfriend. You're trying to have, I didn't even know. I didn't know that's what you're supposed to do. You're a teenager. You're supposed to meet girls. So I put in so much effort in the lab in that situation that, like, just talking to women is a very natural thing for me, but it's not natural in that I've been doing it for so long. I've worked at it for so long. So that's something else I kind of understand, right? Mm-hmm. What could that be, right? And then you think, okay, well, then how did that materialize itself into a podcast? Well, maybe I could just talk to people in general. I never fucking realized that. Yeah. I thought it was girls, but maybe just in general, I knew how to talk to people, and I know how to mainly listen to people is what I know how to do really well. Is I can listen to them. I'm very interested in what they got to say. I'm good at making people feel comfortable. I'm good at making people feel heard oftentimes. I'm good at making people feel understood oftentimes. If I try to put that out there, even though sometimes, like, I don't necessarily always understand, but I'm good at asking questions and picking up on things and what they say. So identifying those things are important to figuring out why me personally might be good at poker. So if you're yourself or anyone out there, if they're thinking about those things, right? You think about, what have I done a lot of? Maybe you just fucking ate a lot of food, right? Well, maybe you're good at eating food. What does that mean? I don't know, right? You never know. But think about the things you've done often, you've done a lot, you've thought about a lot. And those are things that you are probably good at that you don't even realize it.
Yeah. How is it like to be now on the other seat? Like now I get to listen more in these podcasts. This is what I also enjoy about podcasts a lot, because then I don't have to create all the time, but I get to listen to the other person's ideas. How is it now to be the guy being interviewed? Like you have a whole different, it's a whole different setting, right? Not a whole different, but
This is what's going to take me to the next level, bro. I'm telling you right now, my goal is to have one of the most watched podcasts in the entire world, one of the best quality, best productions, best pieces of content. Right now, it could change, but that's my goal. And I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, well, how do I do that? Well, I need to understand every facet of the podcast process itself, right? So I understand the hosting part, but I don't understand the guesting part. And I've done a lot of work in terms of like creating these podcast solvers for guests in terms of what makes for a great guest. And I think I have some really great variables down in terms of identifying which metrics matter more is something I'm working at now. And I've realized that, okay, well, I want to go on podcasts. I'll go on with anyone, right? I want to see what I think they're good at, see what I think that I could learn from them. The entire process around being on a podcast is the thing I've learned the most about. And then just say, okay, well, what do I like what a host says to me? What maybe I don't like, and I don't like. It's not like I don't like things, but what do I find approach or strategy that they use that I can incorporate into my game, and then how do certain questions or topics make a person feel, and why do they talk so much all the time, right? Well, it seems like normal to assume that you're the guest, so you're going to be talking more. So trying to better understand all the elements of a podcast, I think, is what's going to really take me to another level in terms of being better amongst a broader set of guests. So that's sort of the approach I'm thinking about right now.
Okay, I will be very interested in those notes afterwards as well. Like what you thought of it, just to prove myself, if you don't mind sharing, or you can do it here. I mean, I don't care for people to listen, but I'd be obviously very interested in improving that skill as well. Whether I'm going to pursue that in the future or not, I think it's always a good skill to be asking the right questions. Like what I learned from he's called like the FBI investigator. Who has had hostage negotiations, and he said, like, yeah, you gotta ask the how question and the why. I think how and why, so people elaborate more and they go more in. Yeah, so that's like the way of holding a conversation and in a podcast more. But then the question is, okay, how do you develop your questions more? And of course, the more you know about the other person, the better your questions can be. And then experience obviously helps. But yeah, very interested in your take on that as well, like how my questions are phrased and what you would have done differently in hindsight.
That's something I'm deciding about, if it matters how deeply you know someone, because I think if you understand someone's a high level performer, you can take your knowledge of what high level performance means and what it is, and you could break down almost anyone that falls into that category. But you might not know specific intricate questions to ask them. But I think that the better conversationalist you are, the more you can take things from what they said. Like I can go to a pod, I don't even need any notes a lot of times, but I like to touch on certain things that I know are the most interesting. But if I didn't have any notes, I feel like I could still get a pretty good conversation. But the things that are most interesting to them, 100%, are oftentimes going to be things that you're going to be able to find out about them, right? Or a topic or something like that. So you can target your topics to the strength of what that other person is. Whereas the other side of things, you might never know what you're going to get. You never know. You might stumble on a point that you never thought about talking about, that's just going to be this enlightenment or this insightfulness or this entertaining or enjoyable sort of conversation. But oftentimes you can also go into it where, like, I know these points are going to hit. Like, I know this guy's going to look good. They're going to have a great answer. So I'll focus on these what people want to hear. And it's a little less variance in that route versus a more of a open-ended sort of conversation, which I use both strategies over time.
And of course, if you have a podcast, you can do this open version of podcast where you're not cutting it. And of course, if you do a podcast that's recorded off stream, then you can always cut it later. You can ask different questions, and then you can just put it more in a dense form of content, which also can help out a lot. It's maybe less authentic because you're cutting it, but it has obviously downside and upsides to it as well. One of the questions that was also very interesting to me is that we're talking about skill sets, and before I said like from my perspective, but when you think of all the hours you've put in observing not only Gary Vaynerchuk, but like all the people on the internet, on YouTube, and what they've been doing, how many hours would you say have you put into that, and what were the like the most valuable ones for you that you remember?
Oh, like how many hours? I don't know. A lot of thought, a lot of hours, a lot of time out there. I guess when I build my strategy, take ideas that I like from other people, and then I think about what I can already do, and then sort of like build up unique strategies, unique approaches, and then just get better naturally over time, or over time naturally, without so much like, I guess like this is how I want to be, or this is what I want to be like, so I'm just gonna work towards that. I think it just things happen. You like things, you don't like things, and especially when you're not deeply thinking about how you're becoming. I think, it's very easy to be distracted by everything and to not get into that habit of deeply thinking about why you are the way that you are. But yeah, in terms of like the things that I've taken away the most, I don't really know, man. I sort of like, I don't really model my approach after anybody out there. So I think that certain people do really smart things very well. But yeah, I don't really, no, not really taken away from anybody out there, right? Like there's no one I've looked at and I've said I'm like, I just sort of done myself, and like I guess I'm me when I do my shit. And
it will be really, it will be really interesting to have also like a checklist, like like I don't know, there's just like content on YouTube that almost all the creators have seen, like Dr. Phil, right? You've seen it,
not too
the
much,
whole
no.
viral. Yeah, just a little bit, the whole viral thing and how that worked, and the whole stories behind it. Like, I don't know. I don't know why I've spent even time studying that, but for some reason it has been interesting to me in how that all went down, and all these connections, and who basically got to capitalize it on later. Like this girl who was on Dr. Phil's show, she eventually, just created a whole brand around her music. This is completely insane to me. Like how somebody...
Illuminati. I'm telling, that's what they say. Illuminati for Catch Me Outside, Bad Baby. Behind her, you can tell whoever's pushing her, whoever's her team, right? But she did sign to a label, I think, pretty early, so they've very much refined the process for those type of personalities, and the blueprint is there, right? The blueprint's there, and leveraging Instagram and what we see in some influencers or some vloggers or whatever, they then leverage music, which is one of the most popular culture things that exist right now, and they happen to be entertaining or unique or good, or their personality or their look or whatever. So yeah, I think with her, a very, very great strategy. Whoever's behind the scenes, right? Like not giving a fuck what other people think. It seems to be a pretty huge one in terms of like the people that reach that level of success. And repetition, man, leveraging other popular people, a lot of collaborations she did as well too. So if you want to look at like that case specifically, which would actually be a great investigation, how she blew up, it's like in everything, man. It's just collaboration, repetition, energetic, excitement, leverage. It's sort of what works in all these different other worlds. There's similar things that work.
Yeah, I mean, she's a rapper now, and says, yeah, exactly. Like it's just these stories, and sometimes, with also the history of YouTube, there's some stories are even staged. There's even actors or actresses hired, and this whole thing, this whole emotions and viral being of that video, like it's just all staged, like fabricated for people to fall for it. And that's always what I sometimes think as well. Like some occasions they are maybe coincidentally happening, and some others they're just simply staged. And I was asking, okay, how many staged things don't we know of that are just have been fabricated for the people falling for it, and we just don't know about it. We just think it's all real. Also watching like maybe some of these shows where stars are born and stuff. Like how much of that is actually real? Like that is also interesting about content.
Never think about it. I don't know. Yeah, I just never think about it. Never care too much.
Yeah, I guess I guess one of my faults is that I've sometimes branched out too much in terms of content and just found like variable things interesting. And for example, I have once noticed that I know way too many streamers, YouTubers in poker and outside of poker that I've been following. I should have rather created and like just learn from the best. Yeah. And then start creating and just stop like consuming so much. Even though I get some ideas, but yeah, if I consume just everyone's stuff, then damn, like I'm just, that doesn't make any sense. I should just, get like the
maybe,
yeah.
Both. A lot of people consume and they don't do it. It's fine, right? Whatever it is you want to do, right? I don't really watch many people out there at all in general, so there's no one like I watch and then I'm gonna be like them. I've just never been like that in general though. So I've never like seen someone be like, oh, I'm gonna do what that dude's doing. I don't know. Maybe that's a good way to be though. I'm sure you can make it work and make it good and make it a way to get better in the areas you want to get better. You identify people that have talents or have abilities or qualities that you look up to or want to be like, and then you say, okay, how did that person become that? And I guess you could do it like that. Yeah.
What's your favorite book that you read in the last year or so, or 3?
I ain't read many books. I ain't read many books in the last year. It's mainly been a lot of YouTube videos.
Or
I found YouTube videos are much higher value for me personally because they basically aggregate what a book might be, and it's field tested by the people who watch the videos, and they comment and they point out the best parts. And so there's sort of like this process that happens, and of the information lets you know what the best in terms of what our people think is. So you can start with that and you can find other information that people don't like, and you can pick out the best parts or pick out the commonalities or pick out whatever it is you connect with or want to take away. So I found that YouTube videos are infinitely better for me personally in order to retain and just take away like the most important points of something like that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So I think that's a good wrap up. A lot of value out there talking about content. Thank you very much for being on this podcast, Joey. Just also one more question is, who do you think would be a good fit for this Poker Player podcast?
Isn't that one of my questions? That's literally, that's 100% a staple of my Batman. It's a good question to ask, but
I'm going by the book.
I'm very the whole like podcasting and poker now, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens because there's a lot more people like podcasting, and I'm very curious to see what happens and like just if people are interested, if they watch, if they don't care, if like it's always like you can do this, one person can do an interview here and 100 people listen to another person goes on another person's podcast and 200,000 listen to it, right? It's so like dependent on these different factors. So the idea of just like poker podcast, interesting and fed me. And I mean, there's like no one I necessarily think about that I'd like to know more about that I haven't already had on my show in a lot of ways. And most of my podcast guests are all outside of Doyle Brunson. If you can get Doyle Brunson on, that'd be great. But yeah, I don't really know. There's no one I can think about really. Who should you have on? I think it's just like who you're the
basically the people that you basically copying Joey. That's what I'm supposed to do. Basically getting the guests that you have.
They're a good one, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like finding online guys and getting them on is probably a good way to go for you. Because those guys' stories aren't really told, and we sort of know about a lot of the tournament players. They've been on a lot of shows now. Like, what are people still interested in, and what are they still curious about? Like the people I have on the most are people I just enjoy talking to. Yeah. So when I have Doug on, it's because I enjoy talking to Doug a lot. So I like having a dude on. Yeah. So our a former person that we used to both know, or I both know, you probably still know him, Jay Nandez. I used to love having him on, right? So that's why I like talk to people. I like talking with the guy. Right. So I don't necessarily, when I think about like repeat guests or podcast guests, like sometimes it'll be because like people I know it'll do well and people want to see it. But oftentimes it's because like I'm genuinely interested in something about that person or knowing about that person or getting to know that person more. And the reason why I don't have a lot of people on more is because like I'm just not, for whatever reason, right? I'm sure they got their own things, but I'm personally not genuinely interested in what they got to say about something. Or it's a combination of sometimes now no one's going to watch it. So if I know people aren't going to watch it, I'm still, they got me a little bit with the YouTube sort of stuff like that, because I want to try to put more effort into building up this successful channel. And fortunately, that's how YouTube works, right? You got to give the people what they want, and then sometimes give them what they don't know they want, and then sometimes give them what they don't want and they're going to not like. So yeah, it's all, I don't know. It's all your interpretation of how you want to go upon it.
Maybe I should have. Yeah, and I sometimes I'm not pushy enough in that regard. Like Isildur would have been a great guest, and I was playing some PLO with him in Rossadov the other week. But obviously he wasn't on your podcast, was he? Right? He didn't ever do that.
I'm definitely unpushy. I never push anyone to come on for the most part. Maybe like I might ask them a few more times because but I'm not sure what I'm going to do, man. I saw like my own thinking and approach now is so different that I don't really know what I want to do. So I'm kind of figuring that part out. But I think for you, right, just get anyone on, right? Just get people on, see what happens. If you really want to do that, right? Just start getting people on and see what you like, see what you don't like, and see how it goes. See what you care about. See what if you care about people watch, you care about conversation and all that kind of stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. And I didn't even get the chat too many opportunities to basically interact. We read a couple of things in the chat. I have to definitely improve on that part. But maybe you want to say something to the chat, give you the last word before we're wrapping it up here.
If they were watching this for a long time, you must enjoy hearing me talk or something like that. So, but if you did watch, shout out to everybody out there. I see my guy Landon out there is always showing love. Genocide. God mode live. Lysergic Squid. I saw my boy David Huber out there in the chat. What's up, Poppy? Stu Part. Yeah, we got John G. People out there watching, man. So if you guys are out there, much love. Thank you.
All right, isn't it?